Daddy, help me. Pete, where are you?
Hello, and welcome to episode 32 of Voices in the Static, a Silent Hill fan podcast. My name is Whitney, and I'm a longtime fan of Konami's survival horror series and the owner of the fan site SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com. Today's episode is a continuation of my retrospective on the Silent Hill series with an in-depth discussion on a game which was considered to be the black sheep of the series for some time, that is, until the Western releases. Silent Hill 4: The Room. Kind of funny when you think about it now. As Henry would say, what the hell? There's much to discuss, and I am joined by several of my friends and fellow longtime fans. Why don't you all introduce yourselves?
I'm William. I am a contributor for RelyOnHorror.com, and I also have a YouTube channel named Screaming Wave Productions.
I'm Amy, and I run AlchemillaHospital.net and am the admin of SilentHillCommunity.com.
Hi, I'm Rourke. I'm a senior editor at RelyOnHorror.com, and I draw funny pictures on Twitter.
And sometimes depressing ones.
And sometimes depressing ones.
Hi, I'm AJ, also known as the Gaming Muse over on YouTube, where I make the Silent Hill Symbolism series.
It's a kick-ass series. Everyone should watch it.
Thank you.
Yeah, last time we talked, I realized that I was already subscribed to you. I didn't know who you were.
Well, I am happy you all could join me today, finally, after much delays from personal stuff to Discord going down, which really sucked. But before we jump into the general discussion on the game, I'm gonna kind of go through the plot and the development. If you guys have anything to add, just please tell me to shut up and jump in, okay? Alright, so I'm gonna try my best to summarize the game. I might be wrong, but here we go. It's kind of convoluted. In Silent Hill 4, players take control of Henry Townsend, a 20-something photographer who woke up one day to find himself trapped in his apartment with his front door chained shut. The strangest thing, however, is that despite his best efforts, no one could hear or see him, no matter how loud he is inside.
Help me! Help! Let me out of here!
There's something going on in this room.
Damn it! They can't hear me.
It's like he's in another world all on his own. After 5 days of confinement, a mysterious hole suddenly appears within the bathroom.
What the hell? Somebody in there? I wonder if I
working it out this way.
With no better options available and desperate to leave the apartment, Henry decides to throw caution to the wind and see just where the weird hole would lead. The hole, in actuality, is a gateway of sorts and would transport Henry to various locations near his apartment in Nashville and others hours away in the tourist town of Silent Hill.
I saw people getting killed. All these weird other worlds.
In these worlds, Henry would come face to face with the ghost of a serial killer named Walter Sullivan and witness the murders of several people in that killer's attempt to complete the ritual called 21 Sacraments and wake his mother.
My name's Walter. Walter Sullivan. It's time to complete the 21 Sacraments.
But that's my name. And what are the 21 Sacraments?
Don't worry. You'll know soon enough.
The sad thing, well, besides the deaths of innocent people, of course, is that Walter actually believes Henry's apartment, room 302, is his mother.
But soon I'll get to see my mom.
Do you know where she is now?
Yeah, of course. Right where I was born. Lots of people tried to stop me, but it's fine now. It says in the scriptures that I'll be with her. I gotta hurry. Mom's waiting.
Bizarre, I know. Walter never knew his real parents as he was abandoned in room 302 right after his birth.
I told you we shouldn't have a baby, didn't I? Little crybaby. If that super hears him, we're in trouble. Anyway, let's get out of here. I can't stand it anymore.
Eventually, Walter was placed at the Wish House, an orphanage in the woods by Toluca Lake in Silent Hill, that secretly raised children in the teachings of the cult. It was there that Walter was convinced by Dahlia Gillespie that it was possible to wake his mother if the 21 Sacraments were completed to bring forth paradise.
They tried to make it seem like an orphanage, but according to that town's holy scriptures, it was actually the center of their religion. And that kid Walter, he was really into that mumbo jumbo. Especially that descent of the Holy Mother business. It was scary.
Years before Henry was trapped in his apartment, Walter began killing for the 21 Sacraments by killing 10 people, carving numbers in their skin and removing their hearts. Using the hearts he collected, Walter then performed the ritual of the Holy Assumption in the storage room of room 302, making himself the 11th sacrifice for the 21 Sacraments, and allowed him to live on as a ghost in his own otherworld. Several years later, Walter continues the 21 Sacraments, killing 4 more people from beyond the grave by carving a number in their flesh, but leaving their hearts intact.
The weird thing is, there were no clues. Crime scenes were always spotless. No fingerprints, no fibers, nothing. I've been a cop for a long time, but I never seen a case like this one. It's almost like they were killed by a ghost or something.
One victim was an investigative journalist named Joseph Schreiber, who just happened to be looking into the shady dealings of the Order and living in room 302. Just like Henry, Joseph was also trapped with his apartment before his own death. It's still a few more years before Walter begins yet another round of killings to complete the 21 Sacraments, which is when he traps Henry in his apartment.
Now, he's become nothing more than an inhuman killing machine. Well, he's dead now, but he's still trying to complete the 21 Sacraments.
Eventually, the killer turns his eye on Henry's pretty next-door neighbor Eileen Galvin and makes an attempt on her life within her own apartment. She's only spared from being his 20th victim there and then, thanks to the intervention of a young boy, the manifestation of a young Walter Sullivan.
find your mommy. This place, it's dangerous. You need to hurry. Get out of here. I remember now. I was getting ready to go to my friend's party. The boy protected me from the man with the coat.
Once she's taken to the hospital, however, Eileen wakes to find herself trapped within Walter's otherworld, just like her poor neighbor Henry. After Eileen's attack, Henry's apartment begins to become infested with hauntings.
I'm always watching you. I'm always watching you.
And it's only the liberal use of holy candles and saint medallions that keep the dangers at bay. The hole in the bathroom is closed off and another is made in the laundry room, which leads Henry to Eileen at the hospital. But she's unable to see or follow Henry through.
Have you been here the whole time?
Yeah? And I didn't see any hole either. You just disappeared all of a sudden.
On leaving the hospital, the two find themselves on a large spiral staircase that they must descend in order to find, I quote, the ultimate truth. After revisiting several other worlds, now with Eileen in tow, they make it to the bottom where they enter room 302 of the past and speak with the ghost of Joseph Scriber, who fills them in on Walter's history, the particulars of the ritual, and how they are the last two planned sacrifices.
Number 20. The Mother Reborn. Eileen Galvin. Number 21. The Receiver of Wisdom. Henry Townsend. Even now, it may not be too late. Follow the Crimson Tome. Stop. If not, wherever you run, he will catch you. Find him. His true location. It must be nearby. You must kill him. You must kill him.
Returning to his apartment, Henry breaks open a back wall and discovers Walter's crucified corpse and the key to the chains locking his front door in the jacket pocket. He opens the door and once again steps into an otherworld version of his apartment building. He explores the building and eventually unlocks and enters the superintendent's room, where he finds a box with Walter's umbilical cord that Frank Sunderland decided to keep after discovering the newborn Walter in room 302 for some weird-ass reason. Henry returns to his apartment with the umbilical cord and finds that the corpse of Walter is gone in the storage room, and that there's a new hole in the floor where his body once was. Henry enters the hole and comes face to face with Walter and must take down the killer before a possessed Eileen steps towards certain death towards the gravity drive from Event Horizon. I mean the giant spiked gyroscope spitting in a large pool of blood in the center of the room. Depending on how safe you kept Eileen throughout the game, she either takes baby steps or power walks to her doom. Using the umbilical cord, Henry is able to take away Walter's immortality and defeats the killer for good and prevents the completion of the 21 sacraments. Unless, of course, you get the bad ending, that is. Did I miss anything, you guys?
No, I mean, that sounds more or less like game.
Yeah.
Basically it.
Cool. It's kind of convoluted and you don't really get a clear view of it really while you're playing. You really have to kind of dig deep into the notes you find, and yeah, not a lot of narration on the part of Henry or Walter. Joseph narrates, but
Hearing you talking about all that just reminded me of how wild the game is and how lucky we are to have it. I miss when the PS2 era, when there were too many games to count and weird shit like this would just be allowed to exist, you know?
Yeah, I know. It's
I
really
love it.
bizarre when you lay it all out. Like, okay, we got a serial killer killing from beyond the grave, having mommy issues, but thankfully the super of the apartment building you live in kept the guy's umbilical cord so you could take him down.
Yeah.
And they still took chances with games.
Yeah,
I mean it's not just that the story's weird. The whole presentation is like nothing else on any platform of that generation. It's such a unique experience.
Yeah. In some ways, it was ahead of its time. In other ways, it was not finished.
Yeah. So I guess going on that, I guess we'll move on to the development. I actually don't have too much info because the game unfortunately didn't get like a cool making of documentary like the previous three. But this is what I have. Silent Hill 4, the fourth installment in Konami's survival horror series, released on several platforms from the get-go. The game was first released in Japan on June 17, 2004, on both PlayStation 2 and Xbox. It was later released on both consoles and PC on September 7th in North America and September 17th in Europe. One of the biggest misinformation about the game is how it was turned into a Silent Hill game late in development. This is not true. In an August 2004 Boomtown interview with Masashi Tsuboyama, the art director and the monster designer of The Room, and Akira Yamaoka, the game's sound director, they were asked whether or not it was true that The Room was not originally going to be part of the Silent Hill series and was changed partway through development. They responded with, "In a sense, this is true because the game began life simply as Room 302. However, it was always at least a spin-off of Silent Hill, and the most important thing was simply that it be different to the previous games. Certainly if Silent Hill had not existed, we would have not gotten the idea for The Room, so in a sense they've always been together." So basically, it was always going to be connected to Silent Hill in some way. They just weren't sure if it was going to be like an official Silent Hill one early in development. It wasn't going to be a new horror IP or anything.
Just whether or not it was going to be like a numbered sequel.
Yeah, correct. It's clear that the development team really wanted to try new things with this game, and The Room really was a big departure from what the Silent Hill series had been thus far. Instead of exploring a town, players traveled through a single location at a time, with Henry's apartment being a hub world where the players would return often to save, while in the apartment, players were also forced into a first-person perspective. There were some big changes made to the gameplay as well. The game featured a life bar for Henry on the outside of the inventory screen, and he can only carry up to 10 items at a time, forcing players to return to his apartment often to drop off weapons and ammo and a chest to clear up space to pick up key items, since it was impossible to drop anything in-game. It was also the first Silent Hill game in the franchise to feature a degradable weapon, the golf club, which I didn't really use too much, but the game got mostly favorable reviews from critics, which kind of surprised me because I think I was just going off the mindset of the fandom's reaction. It scored between 70 and 80%, similarly to the other Silent Hill games of the time. But many of the reviewers weren't a fan of the game's lack of boss fights. There was only really the one when you got to the bottom of the staircase, and then, of course, Walter. Of logic puzzles in favor of fetch quests, because a lot of these we had to find like pieces of something to complete something to get out of the world. And the repetition of the first 4 environments during the second half of the game while escorting Eileen and being attacked by unkillable ghosts. And honestly, this is the main reason why I'm not a fan of playing the game myself. It's a cool and interesting story, but for me personally, it wasn't a fun game to play. What about you guys? What did you think of the game when you first played? Did the change in playstyle put you off, or did you enjoy the risks that the team took with Silent Hill 4?
Going in, I always knew it was going to be different, and by that point, I loved 3. I loved all of them up until that point. So I was expecting them to change it up, and I had heard some, previews that they were going to add things like the, power-up swing, and that the idea for the room was to set it in the safest place, that you're familiar with, and make that corrupted, So that was a scary idea to me going in.
That actually is true. Like, the first time you come back in and all of a sudden your apartment's hurting you is like a holy shit moment, definitely.
Right, and it takes its time kind of establishing that, because it builds up the hub as this like safe area, and eventually it kind of becomes the opposite. So you end up avoiding it and having to deal with your inventory in various ways. But I remember at the time when it came out, I liked it, but I still felt it was the weakest in the series. And part of that was some of the gameplay. I liked that they had new ideas, but not every single one of them worked as well as it could. But I think one of the biggest things I liked about it was that it was, for the most part, it was isolated from the rest of the games in the series. Yes, it had threads from earlier titles like The Order and Walter Sullivan and other elements that kind of tangentially connected it. But for the most part, it kind of blazed its own trail and tried to introduce a new character and a new dynamic to the series that wasn't just the town is a manifestation of someone's bad dreams or experiences. It was kind of a different take on it, so I appreciated it wasn't just the same tortured soul goes to the town, and his imagination comes true.
Saying that, it's kind of cool that we kind of get the antagonist's view of Silent Hill's manifestations. Like, it's not Henry stuff we're seeing. It's like we're seeing Walter's psychosis, It's like we're seeing...
Yeah, and a lot of people have an issue with Henry's kind of blank slate character, and I kind of liked it in a weird kind of deconstructionist way. I mean, intellectually you could break it down, and whether you have fun with the game or not is two different things, I guess. But the first Silent Hill was plot driven, second one was character driven, and then the third one is kind of a combination of those. But the fourth one is kind of like Henry is almost not a character. He's kind of literally the player in a lot of ways, because he doesn't really emote. He doesn't really act the way you think someone in that situation might react. And so for a lot of that, right. So a lot of that is open to the interpretation of the player. And I think that was another part of why it kind of made it different, because it wasn't story through Henry's eyes rather than Henry experiencing it, and you're the vessel for that. And I love the way it opened too, with the whole, I think the first time I played it, I thought it was Henry, and then you go back and you're like, wait, no, because he just moved in and there's no acknowledgement of what just happened. So it was just a really, really cool way to start the game off, I thought.
Yeah. I really enjoy... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is the opening, is that the detective we're seeing through the eyes of?
Yes.
There?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I'd always wondered about.
I think it's theorized that we did see how Joseph died in the apartment. Because the ghost sight was coming out of the wall. Wasn't that one of Walter's first like one of the...
I think it was the first one.
The guy who ran the wish house, right? Yeah, one of the guys that ran the wish house, I think it was like that first victim went and killed him. But going kind of back to what William, you said about Henry not reacting and stuff, I think it kind of fit in terms of him being the receiver of wisdom. He's just there kind of to watch it all unfold until it was his time. He's just supposed to be this observer, and
I think on the surface that might come across to certain people as kind of like they didn't try with him, as opposed to that being like a conscious choice not to have him be as, emotional as Heather, or as kind of, what do you call it? Kind of interior like James. Like it was him not being a character was actually a decision they made, and I liked it.
It's interesting because I think it put people off because we're so used to horror games being very character driven, emotion driven. You think of a silent protagonist or a character insert, you think of an RPG, but that's what they were trying to do, was make it feel like you were in the story with the first person camera and the lack of characterization. And it just, I think it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because that's not what horror games did at the time. I don't know that there's a lot of horror games that do that even today.
Especially coming off of Silent Hill 3, where Heather was very
Mhm.
emotional and she was very much a part of that story, and then to go from that to like nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think it would have stood out as much if the rest of the game had been more polished. And again, that's just a consequence of the time, and Konami being Konami. You know, they really had a lot less time to work on this one as opposed to previous titles. They had a smaller team. A lot of the things that reviews complained about them lacking, they literally just didn't have. They had to cut them. They had planned for bosses and different kinds of puzzles, and just did not have the time or resources.
Yeah, wasn't Amy, you did a texture dump from Silent Hill 4, and didn't you find the UFO stone in there? The channeling
Yeah, there
stone?
was a few different things. There was a red oil, and I think it was Lob Sylvith on the forums that translated this, and it says, what does it say? Red balm, perfume for exorcism. A special balm for exorcism. If thrown on the ground, a large area will be exorcised. And then there's also a master key, 4S cemetery. And then there's a dirty stone, which it's been theorized that this is, you wash that, kind of like you wash, what is it? The key or whatever. Wash.
It was a
anyway,
coin.
you-
It was a coin, the dirty coin.
Oh, you wash the coin. Yeah, but this is a dirty stone, and you think we think, people think that it might be washed to turn into the channeling stone. And it says stone imbued with a strange power is the comment. So you can get these with like action replay codes, Code Breaker, Game Shark, or hacking the PC game.
You were asking. Silent Hill 4 was the very last one I played, largely because people kept telling me it was bad.
Really? Like, so people's comments made you like skip it?
Not skip it, but mostly just it wasn't high on my priority list. Because I didn't play Silent Hill as they came out. I didn't own a PS2 growing up, and it wasn't until much later that I had any system that could play a Silent Hill game.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were Xbox for most.
Yeah, I started. Xbox was the first platform. I started with an Xbox 360. I'd played Silent Hill 2 at a friend's house, and then I owned a GameCube for most of my childhood, and teenage years, I guess. I didn't own a PS2 until I was like 20, so I hadn't ever, and none of my friends owned 4 because they all hated it.
Oh, so they sold it. They played it and then sold it back, type of thing.
Yeah.
I think it gets a bad rap.
I that's what I was going to say. Is I absolutely think that people are way too harsh on it, especially in retrospect. I can understand what people's problem with it was, because it is so weird and so different for what the series had established at that point. But I don't know. I think experimentation is good and healthy for a series. And I think that the only complaint I've ever really had with it is I don't like how video gamey it is. I don't think like the health bar on screen is weird, and I especially hate the like pie thing for powering up.
Well,
it just doesn't feel necessary to me.
So you didn't like the HUD changes. What did you feel about them actually limiting your inventory? Like that change, it went from kind of being insane at how much like ammo and weapons a character can hold to a more realistic take. Did you enjoy that aspect at least?
You know, I wouldn't use the word enjoy. I was kind of indifferent to it because it was like, oh, it's Resident Evil now.
No, but Resident Evil let you drop stuff, right? Didn't Resident Evil let you drop things, or?
Well, yeah, in Resident Evil 0, you can just drop shit on the floor. Mm-hmm. But like the idea of having to go back to an inventory box is Resident Evil to a T. And I don't know, I just didn't think about it. It's like, oh, okay, we're doing Resident Evil now. Because it became increasingly obvious that, I might be wrong about this, but Konami wanted Silent Hill Konami wanted Resident Evil numbers with their sales.
Mm.
So the series started to reflect Resident Evil more and more as it went on.
It's funny that it's because it was different than Resident Evil that kind of put it on the map, and here years later Konami is trying to ape.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, Resident Evil or Silent Hill 1 was designed to be like a direct competitor to Resident Evil, from what I understand. And I remember they used, instead of survival horror, they called it survival terror, which I was like, oh damn, we're getting serious now. Because it, I again, I didn't grow up with a PlayStation, but I was very familiar with what Silent Hill was as a brand because of marketing. In old issues of EGM and stuff, Electronic Gaming Monthly, they would have articles and interviews and marketing for it. And I especially loved for Silent Hill 1, there's this ad of a padded room that has like a big long paragraph about what the game is. And it always...
that ad, I'm sorry, still makes no sense.
It's a goofy ad in terms of what the game actually is. But I don't know, it stuck with me, which is what an ad's supposed to do.
Yeah. What did you think of I really like the advertising campaign for Silent Hill 2 with the wounds will heal, but your mind will still be scarred forever.
Yeah. I love the campaign for 3 as well. That's
that was good too.
Overall.
The first game's ads felt really corny, and then in the second game, they really took a step up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd say that's kind of the difference. I mean, we already talked about 1 and 2, but that's the difference between those two games, is that the first one, I would say, is kind of corny. It's very, very ambitious, and it stands the test of time, but compared to the others, it's the most straightforward, like, we're making a spooky game kind of thing. Whereas all the other games, feel like they're trying to treat themselves like art.
Silent Hill 1 was a lot of, like, their focus was just on scaring the players with their environments and stuff. It was less, like Sato said in that interview about how they took a different approach when they started Silent Hill 2, where they made sure to work out the actual plot before designing all the levels and whatnot. They kind of did it backwards with Silent Hill 1, and they kind of decided on the right approach more with Silent Hill 2, which is why I think that story's plot resonated with so many for so long, is because they put the time and effort to shape that story. And just from then on, the plots kind of got more and more detailed. I mean, just look at The Room. I mean, I was saying how kind of convoluted it was, but when you go through it, it's like a lot of thought went into their whole plot.
Well, that's sort of what I was leading up to, is that in comparison, because you can feel that. You can feel the ambition getting more and more, and them wanting to do more and more with what Silent Hill could be. And 4 is like the ultimate version of that. 2 kind of played around with it, ditched all the cult shit, and went balls to the wall with just being haunting and sad and weird. And then 3 kind of tries to balance both of those, being, the cult stuff from Silent Hill 1, but still having like the meaningful parables with the monsters and stuff. But then 4 is like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go all in on the weird.
Yeah, it's definitely the weirdest one.
And I saw it more as like Silent Hill 1 was like just a love story to horror in general. And then they started, but let's do our own thing and like really get into the story after that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, 1 has all those, Crichton Street and Kuntz Street. And
what did you guys feel about the environments in this game? So it went from very graded and whatnot to then Silent Hill 2 was very depressive, kind of atmospheric, sad, wet. 3 was very visceral with the other worlds, and then we have 4, which it's weird. It has a bit of 3 with like the
moving walls and red stuff.
The moving walls and the red stuff, but it has a lot of kind of desaturated areas, especially like the subway or when you're in the water prison. I don't know how to describe it. It feels like a combination, but it feels very desaturated to me compared to like Silent Hill 3, which was very kind of bright, but then dark and visceral.
Silent Hill 4's environments, I think, were one of the strongest aspects of it. My last time replaying it, I had this feeling that it almost felt like a walking simulator, and not in a bad way, because
Mhm.
this is way before it, but because of the fact that there are no real bosses, there's fewer puzzles, a lot of it's just fetch quests. It really does feel like you're just being asked to walk through and explore this haunting scenery and all these memories, and I really enjoy that. I found that to be the most compelling part of it. And I mean, people ask me what my favorite game is, and I always say either 4 or Downpour, depending on which one I played last. So I'm biased here, but I think that's one of the strongest aspects of the game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask you. I remember you talked a lot about how you thought it's kind of you don't agree with people's takes on Henry. That you actually identified with him a bit. I thought maybe you might want to talk a little bit more about how you view Henry as a character, being
Oh
like
boy.
being like maybe on the spectrum or whatever. I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting. If you could go in a little bit more about that.
I have become if I have become known for anything, I think Henry Defense Squad is a big part of that. I've literally had people I've talked to online that do like role play, and a person that role played as Henry going, "Oh man, I watched your video and that's how I came up with my way of writing the character."
That's cool.
Yeah, he definitely comes across as far less characterized in the traditional sense because we don't really get to talk to him or hear from him, but he has a lot of behaviors and motions, ways of moving and acting, and even just the apartment he lives in that are very easy to see as characterization if you take the time to look at them. Personally, around the time I got into this game, I was diagnosed with with ADHD and different neurological things like that, and I very much saw things in his behavior that matched with that. And a lot of people, knowing so very little about ADD, are like, "What the fuck are you talking about? He's a weird, quiet video game character." And I'm like, I really think it's very easy to see him as being, like you said, on the spectrum, being mentally ill or having a neurological disorder just from the way that he lives and his actions and behaviors. And that made the story even more compelling to me because now I really identified with him personally. And I think there's a lot of people that see him that way.
Did you guys? Am I the only one that kind of felt uncomfortable with the whole like peeking in on Eileen through the hole?
Yeah, I think that's the point where it's kind of like Rear Window of the game, right? So you have all these points of views, like looking out through the windows in the living room. You have the peephole. You have all these things that the game kind of forces you to do, and I think it's purposefully done to make you feel like you're creeping,
Felt like a
you're
creep.
creeping in on people. Yeah,
Mhm.
creeper simulator. But and I think that's the point, because especially because from Henry's point of view, that is mostly what he does. He looks out of that front, peephole. So that's kind of his outlet or his connection to the world. And initially, that's his first contact with Eileen, right? He sees her first through the peephole, and then later on, he meets her in person.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of a neat trick for the dev team to do because I mean that really was your only connection to the outside world was to just observe. And I mean that's his role again in the whole ritual, but all he could was observe from afar. He couldn't interact with anybody. Like
Then over time that escalates too, because out of that peephole you'll see Frank Sunderland, and you'll see the handprints. Like things keep getting worse on the
Walter.
outside from his point of view. Yeah, everything.
Seeing Walter through that peephole took years off my life the first time.
What about when you saw yourself?
That also didn't like that.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
That I did enjoy their haunting designs. I thought that was pretty cool.
So that was something that I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
I adore the way that 4 handles ghosts and its interpretation of hauntings. I would say that far and away, it scared me the worst of any of the Team Silent games. I especially love herky-jerky, weird moving stuff in terms of horror, and that's all that game is. It's, you know, all the ghosts move so weird, and the shaking heads. And the game's attract mode where it plays what's the name of the song? Your Way?
Room of Angel?
Room of Angel. It plays the Room of Angel, and it's showing clips and everything, and there's like 3 things in horror games that I can say petrified me, and Silent Hill 4's attract mode is one of them, and I don't know what it is specifically, but there's a moment in that opening where the music stops and it becomes what it looks like footage shot off of a television with like a handy cam,
Mhm.
and it's just this shot of the female ghost like charging at you out of the dark.
No, you mean the twin victims?
No, it's not a twin victim.
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's
Is it Cynthia's ghost?
yeah, it's Cynthia's ghost, like charging at you from the darkness of the subway otherworld.
Oh,
and
I
she
thought
has this like
when you said charging, that
Yeah.
part where the
No,
twin victim
it's-
comes at you.
mm-mm. She's like crawling at you, but because of the way it's filmed, like the frame rate is really low, like it's missing frames, and you just hear this
I know
like
exactly.
Yeah.
it's,
Yes.
oh my
Ugh.
god, it scared the living fuck out of me.
This game had the hands down the best trailer of
That
all
with the
of
ink
them.
and the target practice ink design thing.
It's just like
Yeah.
that trailer alone. If someone doesn't want to play the game, I would just show them the trailer, and that would
Yeah.
definitely intrigue them because
That's one of the trailers that got me excited / scared to death to play it, because it had, like Rourke was saying, the herky-jerky head stuff. I remember
Yeah.
seeing, it looked like how the girl in The Ring moved, you know, where she'd be like on that VCR and she'd like jump to another place in, you know, in the room.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing, whose ghost is that?
Cynthia.
No. Well, she has sort of like a ring thing going on, but then there's that the male ghost that like he runs after Harry or Henry, but he
Richard?
like he'll
Yeah,
yeah.
Richard. His is like a slow motion type of like jerky rewind fast forward type of.
Yeah.
He is upsetting.
I remember seeing that in the trailer, and I remember seeing all the Cynthia stuff, like the ring stuff, and I'm like, oh god, I don't want to play this game.
That's a really good segue to mention something I've kind of wanted to, in the fact that this game, they very much, when they decided on this concept, they wanted to make it more Japanese. The team felt like the first 3 were very Western, which was the idea, but now they wanted to make a game based on their own culture, and part of that was the ring ghost, which is, you know, very much Cynthia's inspiration. That comes from some of their folklore. A lot of the ghost elements in general, and I feel like that's part of the game's strength, is that they're really pulling on their own folklore and culture. And if they'd had more time and resources, those trailers just really give you the feeling of what they wanted to do, and it's just fantastic.
Also, I love how all the ghosts are real characters in the game too. Like, it's not, I mean, some of them are kind of generic, like the twin victim doesn't maybe have as direct a connection as maybe the Cynthia ghost or other characters like that, but I like that for the most part, all the actual ghosts are familiar characters, and now they're enemies. I think that's a really cool way to kind of connect everything.
How did you guys feel with the whole? A lot of the backstory was actually revealed more in the promotional materials, like with the Japanese Silent Hill 4 website. That they had the tome, Crimson Tome or whatever, where it kind of gave backstories on his previous victims that we do see in the game, but we never get like an in-game explanation for these like first 10 victims. Like, how did you feel about that? Do you feel that it should have been more incorporated within the game itself, or did you like that you had to kind of search for it online?
I like that there was extra supplemental material, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that none of it was necessary to understanding the story. It helped inform the story, but like something I always complain about, because I'm the ultimate complainer, is whenever someone talks to me about or asks me why I don't like the Matrix sequels, I will say that there's so much of it feels like they're just making it up as they go. And they said, well, you get a lot more out of it if you watch the Animatrix. I'm like, that doesn't count. That's a failing on the storyteller's part if it requires me to see some completely different medium of storytelling to understand what the fuck is going on. But with Silent Hill 4, it doesn't do that. It helps to inform the story if you Google that stuff, sure. But I would say that I didn't lose anything not knowing any of those things the first time I played.
Agreed. Though I also think it's possible that stuff that they weren't able to include, and if that's the case, they found a neat workaround to get it to fans.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of interesting, because, I played through the game, but I really didn't look that deep into Walter's other victims, and you realize all of them sort of touched his life in some way. Like, I didn't realize the first victim was one of the owners of the Wish House, or, for example, that old lady ghost with the hat and the purse? That she
love her.
She just sort of is her name Sharon? I can't remember her name.
Yeah, Sharon Blake.
There you go. I never knew where she came from until I was taking notes and stuff for this podcast, and I realized I was reading through the Crimson Tome stuff that she was just this ex-cult member that went in search of her husband and son, and Walter just came across her in Toluca Forest and killed her. She was just this old lady just minding her own business. And now
literally.
And out of all the ghosts, she's very kind of non-confrontational. She just floats around, just floating with her purse.
Yeah.
This is my afterlife. This sucks.
This sucks.
Yeah, like all of his victims are either people that were part of the cult, part of his life, or just randos he accidentally ran into. So I really always, and this personally comes from having written and thought about the game quite a lot and having my own sort of head canons about the characters. It feels like Walter was pushed into these events and lashed out at the guys that made him do it. And then at that point, it was just like, oh, you're here. Okay, death.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 people I think he kills, or 3 out of the 6, were the people that trained him.
Yes. I bet you he would have killed Dahlia Gillespie if Alyssa didn't beat him to it. Now there's some parts of the game I don't think I really get. What do you think is the deal with the manifestation with the younger Walter? Is that like the last bit of his goodness is trying to or his sanity trying to stop things? Or where did he come from?
I have many thoughts, but I don't want to monopolize because I have too many thoughts about this game.
Well, I was going to ask if I could take the stage for a sec here, because I have many thoughts. And
Yes.
You're probably going to hate me because they go completely polar opposite to your observations about Henry.
Okay.
Something, and I have nothing to back this up, so this is 100% theorizing. But with Walter and the younger Walter, you're saying that one is sort of the last vestige of goodness possibly that's inside of Walter, whereas adult Walter is nothing but this lunatic murderer. I have always suspected that Henry is also a Walter. Hardly anybody has any way of actually interacting with Walter or with Henry. Henry can't leave the apartment outside of this other world created by Walter. And the one that always really got to me is the little kid Walter looks fucking nothing like Walter, but he does kind of look like Henry.
He does.
And I've always felt that Henry, the part of the reason that he does feel so empty and stilted is because he's caught between these two mindsets, almost like a decision that hasn't yet been made, and that he's being pulled in these many directions, and he himself is one of the ghosts, not in a hostile crawling out of the walls and stuff, but that he's what is left of Walter in this apartment, and it's reawakened because that's the other thing. We have nothing for Henry before the events of the game. We don't know anything about him as a person. We don't know anything about where he comes from, who he knows. nothing. There's nothing there other than, I guess, he's a photographer.
Yeah, he mentions about taking photos in Silent Hill, and Frank Sunderland gave him a photo from.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only
like.
thing we know about his past and his family is he has like a baby photo and a graduation photo, and he says that was a bad time. That's it.
So it's, I don't know. I've always felt that Henry was more of a representation than he is like a human being in this world. And with the choices we make, that we, Eileen can end up being sacrificed because of our actions, not Walter's. Eileen is the one that walks forward into those blades and is pushed further because of the way we treat her, not Walter. And I don't know, it always felt like there was more going on there, especially because of what an empty vessel he is. Now, of course, video games have all sorts of empty vessels. I mean, Ethan from Resident Evil 7 is very deliberately hollow feeling, other than some snide remarks he makes. Well, that's special. And, Link is the famous one, or Gordon Freeman is literally a refrigerator on a skateboard. But Henry is empty, yes, but he also has a very deliberate emptiness. He can speak, he can interact with the world around him, but not other characters really. And he has this dreamlike quality, because I always hear people say that Silent Hill 2 is trying to aim for a dreamlike quality with its terrible voice acting, but Henry feels deliberate because nobody else in the game feels like him. Everybody else, it's all that kind of PlayStation 2 era voice acting, but Henry specifically has that very deliberate way of speaking.
Especially his, "Hey, are you okay?" to this woman who is obviously gonna die in a few seconds.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
It's just a dream, right? I think I drank too much last night. I never got to do that special favor for you. I feel like I'm dying.
It's okay. It's just a dream.
He himself feels like a dream.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something. It's what I took away from the game the first time I played it. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I went online and fucking nobody has ever said that before. It's like, oh, maybe I'm wrong.
I really like that idea.
So do you think by defeating, Walter, stopping the sacraments, you think he becomes more of a whole person since he's like
that's my other thought is, now this is going even further, is are we meant to assume that yes, Walter is dead? Or is there a actual physical human Walter in this world occupying room 302, but the child Walter, Henry as Walter, and the crazy adult Walter are all three of them inhabiting apartment 302 and possibly inhabiting a person? Or are they emotions, different emotional states for Walter that have like burned themselves into the room? I haven't gotten this ending in a really long time. In the like the good ending where it's Henry and Eileen in the hospital, are they interacting with each other? Are they talking to each other?
Yeah, he gives her a bouquet.
Well, he doesn't.
Okay.
Does he say anything? I know she does.
Like, does she speak directly to him? I can't remember.
Yeah, she speaks to him. I could have sworn he said something.
He might.
It's been a while.
Hold on, I'm gonna look at it myself.
YouTube it
and see.
Yeah. Personally, talking about young Walter and everything, I just, whether he is Walter's goodness or a part of his psyche broken off, since we do have some backstory that says that Walter had Volteal forced into his mind by the cult, which is incredibly vague and so open to interpretation. I just find it really fascinating that ultimately it is Walter that defeats himself, because young Walter intervening in Eileen's killing that first time is what leads to the possibility of the good ending. If he hadn't intervened, then Henry never would have had a chance to screw everything up. And I really love that detail where whether Walter is completely gone or not, there's a part of him that managed to try and stop this.
Yeah.
Guess we'll have to find a new place to live, huh?
Yeah, I always really identified with him, crazy, horrible murderer. I feel bad for him because...
Well, the best villains are the ones that you can understand.
Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of digging into the idea of the serial killer when I was researching him. And he isn't a serial... Obviously, he's a fictional character and there's magic and all this, but it's just interesting that he is not what a serial killer is in the real world. The kind of personalities they have, the kind of traits they show. He's so very different. He's a fascinating character.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so guys, I looked at the ending. He doesn't say anything. He hands her the bouquet, and then she starts talking. I mean, I guess he kind of does a noise, but I don't know.
Thanks. Guess we'll have to find a new place to live, huh?
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, you can interpret that as that in the idea of there is a real Walter in this world, and that this middle point of Walter that I'm perceiving as Henry won out in that ending, or the idea that it is just this emotional state that was left in the apartment, and that in victory he can now leave. You know, whether or not.
That kind of turns this into the end of Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was like, oh, is he a
I mean,
dream?
hey, it's the same voice acting. Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha. Okay, so now I'm just like stuck on this Rourke's theory. It's
I'm imagining Henry doing the Titus laugh now. That's where I'm at.
Ha.
Go find his voice actor on Twitter. Do the Titus laugh. Like what the fuck I'm talking about?
What? Okay. Now this we've already mentioned kind of several times how weird this game is. How different it looks compared to like the creatures and stuff kind of look from the other games, which might be due with Ito not doing the creature designs. What do you guys feel about the whole Walter seeing an apartment being his mom? Like, how do you get to that point in your psyche where you're like, yep, that makes sense?
Let me tell you something about him, Walter Sullivan. When he was a little boy, he began to believe that my apartment was actually his birth mother. He decided to free her from the stains and corruption of this world. At the orphanage, he learned of the 21 sacraments, the only way to purify her.
That was one of the weird elements of the game that I loved. The umbilical cord, all the weird water prison stuff, and child Walter and the whole mother issues. Like, there's something there. The game never puts a pin on it, but yeah, little Walter thinks the room is his mother
And wants to be in his mom again.
Whoa!
Right, and you're like, what? And automatically you think, like, is this literal? Is it figurative? Like, what's the metaphor here? If it's a metaphor.
It's like he wants to go back to the womb, and yeah. I mean, okay, let's go back to the apartment level where when we explore, we get sort of like these little snippets of his father.
I told you we shouldn't have a baby, didn't I? Little crybaby. If that super hears him, we're in trouble. Anyway, let's get out of here. I can't stand it anymore.
It's obvious his father was very abusive, and his mom just sort of went with him. I don't know if she really wanted to leave the baby in the apartment. Like, why would Dahlia? Of course she would do it because she's evil, but it just seems really strange to me that she would be like, yeah, Walter, your apartment is your mom. You just have to do this, this ritual and you could totally break her back.
I wonder, I don't have enough knowledge to be 100% sure about this, but various articles say that this story was influenced by a Japanese novel called Coin Locker Babies, where it's about these babies that get abandoned in coin lockers and their search for their moms. And I don't know if maybe there's an aspect of the story that deals with thinking the box is your mom, or like ties into sort of being abandoned in a place and associating that place with your mother. I don't know. But I wonder if the idea didn't come from some part of that story.
Maybe. Yeah. I think I've heard of that before. When you said coin locker baby, I was like, oh yeah.
You're saying that, like, Dahlia convinced him all this stuff. I'm just imagining now the murder is a pathway to many abilities some consider unnatural.
There's another aspect to this. I mean, we've kind of mentioned this, but there is a connection to Silent Hill 2 with this game. It's very vague. Some people, I guess, could ignore it, but the superintendent is Frank Sunderland, and he makes a passing, or Henry makes a passing remark that he lost his son a few years back, like he went missing, which
seems to confirm at least that James never came home.
Yeah, he never came home after going to Silent Hill. Did you like that little connection, given that there was a Walter Sullivan stuff in Silent Hill 2 with the grave and the magazine article? Do you wish
I don't think it denies it doesn't deny any of the endings. It just means that James never came back. So technically speaking, any of those endings could still be valid for the Silent Hill 4, story to be valid.
James and Laura in the car. It's like, where are we going, Mr. Sunderland? Well, first of all, not back to that shitty apartment.
And we don't really get a lot of backstory about what their relationship was like, James and Frank. It could have just been like a normal shitty relationship, and he didn't want to talk to him anymore.
I mean, his dad was weird, and now we know kind of why James was weird. I mean, who keeps an umbilical cord? Just
that is a total David Lynch thing.
Why?
Oh, for sure.
Ugh.
It makes you wonder about their relationship, because obviously umbilical cords is associated with kids. He clearly became very attached to this baby he only knew for a little while. What does that say about his relationship with his actual son, who never came back?
They were estranged, or...
Yeah, he's definitely still, attached and broken by it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, you're saying you don't know a whole hell of a lot about the development.
Yeah, I don't.
Do you know if the connections to Silent Hill 2, was that planned, or were they just like, we set all this shit up in Silent Hill 2, how about we pay it off?
I assume it's because they set up the stuff in Silent Hill 2 that they decided to expand. Because, like they said, this is supposed to be connected to Silent Hill from the get-go as a spin-off. I can see them going, well, we said this stuff about a serial killer in 2. It'd be a cool thing to maybe do an offshoot about this guy.
I'm just curious if when they did the Walter stuff into, if they were like, let's not go too deep into this, because maybe we can make a whole game out of it.
I'm sure that was not the case. Just coming from a creative standpoint, like, I think that was just some random bit that they were like, hey, let's there's a little kernel of this, and let's pay that off later, not necessarily.
It's like, is this 1976 Star Wars where George is going, yeah, maybe if there's a sequel it'll be cool, or is this 1978 Star Wars where George Lucas is going, I have 9 movies planned out.
Had it all planned out from the beginning. That's why I kept changing things.
Well, I wonder, because the games, if you look at the development, they were made really close. 3 and 4 were being made at the same time, and they were started immediately after 2. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it wasn't planned, but it was something that some of the creatives were like kind of messing with the idea, especially because I'm trying to remember if this is true or not. But in the graveyard in 2, you see Walter Sullivan's name. I'm pretty sure no other characters other than characters in Angela, Eddie, James, and then Walter.
There was another one.
Is there another one?
Jennifer Carroll. Didn't we see her?
Well, she wasn't in the graveyard. She was on a statue.
Could have
But
sworn
there's a graveyard at the end of the game that I think has random graves, and most of them don't have real names.
It was at the labyrinth right before you jumped down into the grave. Yeah, I believe there was another name. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, Walter Sullivan was there. But also in Silent Hill 2, they really leaned in on the whole, like, he killed himself in jail, which was apparently not Walter. It was a lookalike or something.
It's a little vague, but I always kind of understood it as a way for, like, Walter, has these sort of mind powers. I feel like he probably made this guy take the fall because he needed to die in a very specific way.
Yeah.
Possibly. That was always my interpretation. It's open to interpretation, but that's kind of how I always saw it.
We kind of saw that power with, I just lost his name. The chocolate milk dude. What's his name?
Jasper?
Jasper, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of seemed a little, he was weird and very into the cult and stuff, but it seemed like he didn't want to die. It seemed like he got taken over by something.
I finally met him! The one the nosy guy talked about! The devil!
Well, it's kind of like what you kind of mentioned earlier with the whole, like, people think that Valtiel took over Walter at some point.
It's a point of confusion, I think, because I get a lot of comments on videos and research where people say, oh, but he died in the jail. So I think it's something that is meant to be vague, and a lot of people don't quite catch on to the extra part.
Yeah, because we don't even, like I mentioned before we started recording, like, I thought he did, and then I'm like looking into it, I'm like, no, he doesn't, because Joseph,
you find his body.
You find his body, and then Joseph also says, like, in a note, one of those bloody notes, that he doesn't suspect, he suspects that who died was not really Walter, but that's something you can easily miss. So if you go in believing that he killed himself in jail, even though you see his body in the storage room, I mean, you've seen other fucked up things. It doesn't,
may also lend detail to the point that they weren't planning a connection at first because they had already kind of killed him.
Yeah.
And all this stuff is given third hand as well. You're finding clippings, it's word of mouth kind of stuff. You seeing the body, whether that's a physical body or, an interpretation.
He has wings. Like, what's with that?
Manifestation, you
that
could go that way with it, but I think a lot of that is left deliberately open, and I think from Silent Hill 2, maybe that was one of the kernels for stuff that they had built up a little bit, that they were like, okay, we can potentially make a connection to an earlier game, but not something that's obvious.
This definitely is a game where you have to kind of, to get the full story, you really have to do your homework, where you got to make sure you find all of those notes and really look in, like, between the lines, because it's not spelled out for you within the narrative itself. You gotta, like, for example, when you find the body, there's so much just told in the environment of that space. You see the refrigerator with the open door and blood packs, or maybe even like parts of the hearts or whatever. You can see the little ritual setup that he did. Because that stuff is not spelled out in the main game. It's all through the notes that you learn about that he did the 10 heart, like, ritual thing to be able to kill from beyond the grave, but it's in the environments. If you were pay attention to all your environments that you explore, you get bits and pieces. Like, Another little cool part that I like in the water prison, it seemed like a really strange area, but when you picked up the notes, there was one with the kid, like the guy's like watching me from the windows, and my friend disappeared, and I don't know if they're dead. It's little things like that you can build up sort of what Walter's life was like growing up in that wish house and being thrown in that prison and kind of being brainwashed into this cult, and then yeah.
Was one of my favorite parts of the game.
That though. Yeah. The actually do your work as the player and sort of research the things and explore more than fighting stuff randomly.
Yeah, because there's just so much you can miss. And that's not to say that you can't look too deeply into this stuff, as we saw with Circumcision Theory that happened in 2015. But it does tell a lot. This game especially tells a lot with its different environments. I think more so than the previous 3 that did tell a story, but a lot of the story was hidden in the notes and in the environments. Like, for example, the subway, when you got down there, you kept seeing like these long like worm type things going through the walls and stuff.
Tubes. Yeah.
And then later on you kind of realize, oh my God, it's supposed to be like an umbilical cord. Walter is trying so hard to get back to his mom, which he thinks is a room that maybe he seems it's like a womb or something. I don't know. Just when you get the bad ending, there's sort of like this pulsating noise within room 302. It reminds me of like the womb sounds, like when you're getting I don't know. Do you guys remember that part, or am I just making that up? I could have sworn there was like kind of like a watery sound, pulsating sound.
The woman was immediately rushed to St. Jerome's Hospital, but died a short time later of her injuries. She has been identified as a Miss Eileen Galvin of Ashfield. The last body discovered was found in room 302 of the South Ashfield Heights apartments. It is believed to be that of its occupant, Henry Townsend. The body was reportedly disfigured beyond recognition, making identification impossible.
It's not circumcision, though. I could tell you that right now.
Well, like there's so much weird audio shit in that game. I mean, there's the
you cut off. Can you repeat that?
There's the room with the Eileen sex sound.
Yeah.
Which, thank you so much for making that a track on the soundtrack, because I had that blaring at my house when I still lived with my parents, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh God, no!
Speaking of Eileen, real quick, we haven't mentioned yet, but her giant head, that one scene, that almost became like the kind of the visual for the game as a whole. Every time you'd pull up an article, you'd see that image, and it's just a random room. Yeah, it's just a random room. You walk in, and her eyes are like jiggling, but they follow you, and they're the height of the room. I just thought that was one of the cool, creepy things in that game, going along with the weird sound design and all that stuff.
Yeah, and there's no reason to go in that room. It's just spooky.
Yeah, I mean, you can come across it when you're looking for Eileen, and then you can bring her back in there. That section, there were some weird, scary little parts, I guess, with the different hospital rooms, but there was a lot of humor in that one level. You had the wheelchairs that attacked you, and then you had the patient demons that would burp when you hit them.
Yeah.
That part
Continue
was pretty
burping
great.
as you hit them down the stairs.
Yep.
Yeah, that was my favorite little bit to do.
And it's kind of halfway in the middle, like it's in the middle of the game, and maybe it's purposeful to give you a minute to breathe.
Maybe it could be like, let's give some levity and make this sound weird.
Like the blooper reel in one.
Yeah. Okay, so since we brought up Eileen, how did you guys feel about the whole escort thing? I did think it was cool that you could arm her with a variety of weird weapons. I mean, her purse, a chain, a riding crop. And she could go, like, hog wild hitting the enemies. If you kept her, if you didn't equip her with a weapon, she would be more likely to stay back. So she could help you out, but you ran the risk of her getting more damaged and then power walking into the Doom machine there at the end.
The Doom machine.
Yeah, that's a good name for it.
Somebody update the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Did you want to go over the circumcision meltdown of 2015, by the way?
God.
I guess I should. For those who don't know, so late in 2015, I think it was December, Voidberger, she got this weird Ask SFM question from this person who wasn't a Silent Hill fan. They were trying to get into the series, and they came across this weird section on Walter Sullivan's character page on the Wikia, where there was this whole tangent about how he's a serial killer and who's kind of pushed to that because he was probably circumcised as a newborn baby and then went into the evils on what circumcision does to a baby, the pain, death, all that guess. I mean, stuff, it doesn't, which is valid, I guess, but the guy who wrote this, his name, he would go by Alex Shepard, that was his name on the Wikia. He was a top tier admin of the site. So there was a little behind the scenes war going on with that page where he'd put it in and then another person would be like, this has nothing to do with the game. It's sort of kind of your own interpretation, theory.
Yeah, like at best it should be on a theories page.
Yeah, and they would remove it and then the guy would put it back. And once it was pointed out to Voidberger and she tweeted about it, people were like, what the fuck? And they all went and everyone sort of kind of descended on the Wikia. And Alex, I don't know if he was having a bad day, a year, whatever, took this personally, like that people were not seeing the circumcision being a part of Walter's downfall. He was having none of it. Where people would remove it, he'd be like, banned! You don't know, I'm like one of the top 5 Silent Hill fans. I know what I'm talking about. You guys don't. He just sort of had this breakdown. And the poor other admins of the Wikia were just like, what are you doing? What?
I mean, I remember it being even worse than that. I mean, he got really personal.
Yeah, he got personal with another admin where he started berating her because I guess she just had a kid.
Yeah, he started like demanding to know if she had
mutilated. Did you mutilate your baby? And just it was getting awful.
It was really bad.
But the point was, he was such a high-ranking admin that it came to the point where they had to reach out to the people who run Wikia to ban him. And then it was later found out that he was incorporating this circumcision type stuff to different games like Xenogears and there was another game too. It was cropping up all over. And I looked at some of his examples of like why he thought this was a big deal in this game. And he'd bring up stuff like, oh, well, in the hospital, there's this stretched out skin on the wall. Mind you, the skin looks like it's someone skinned someone's back and hung it up on a wall. But he was saying that was foreskin. The greedy worms you encounter like in the subway or the mushrooms you see in the water prison were very phallic. And he was very stuck on this theory, and it was kind of his downfall because he got really nasty about it, even though it was.
Well, he started talking about like the Jewish conspiracy and sheeple, and it got really uncomfortable.
And it got to the point where people began like reach out to like Jeremy Blaustein, and even Ito got a question about it, and they were just, what the fuck? And Voidberger brought this up in, I think she talked about this during her Silent Hill 2 Let's Play, where she kind of looked it up about circumcision. Was it even something that's even practiced in Japan? Like, would it be something that these Japanese developers would make an issue about, you know? And it turns out, no, it's not really a thing in Japan. Like, less than 20%.
It's a thing in the United States and among Jewish people.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
So it just seemed like the stuff that he brought out with the whole evidence for circumcision was not seeing that it was supposed to be more of mother and umbilical cord and womb stuff and less about penis, because it wasn't about the penis, it was about the womb. And being
Silent Hill 4, less about the penis.
You know what I mean? I mean, there are phallic symbols within the series. We saw it.
Sure.
Especially in Silent Hill 3, we saw it with like the penis monster.
Weenies are scary. I know it.
I mean, we got a teenage girl fighting a penis monster. There you go. But so it was this big.
Sometimes an umbilical cord in a box is just an umbilical cord in a box.
So that was, I mean, so when
we need Freud up in here, yeah.
So I recently had made a joke on Twitter where someone asked you to give a phrase that only people in your fandom would understand, and I went circumcision theory. Because it only lasted like a couple days, but it left its mark where people were just like, it got what was the art? There was an article in New York Magazine did an article about this breakdown of the Wikia. Let me see. Oh, I found it. The title of this is "This video game site is suddenly very fixated on circumcision."
Yeah. One of my... go.
I was going to read the opening paragraph. The obsessive administrator of a wiki site dedicated to the video game horror franchise Silent Hill, so devoted to the site that he's made 40,000 edits, apparently went mad with power this week and decided that Silent Hill isn't just about a spooky hospital. It's actually subtle allegory against male circumcision. That's a new one. And just went off. I mean, there's like quotes about stuff he said. For example, this is a quote from Alex. "You're a fucking horrible human being for advocating genital mutilation, and 99% of Americans who advocate mutilating penises are fucking brainwashed morons," he wrote to the anonymous editor who changed his post. Circumcision can have a huge effect and huge influence on the development of a human being's psyche. It's the truth. What you are trying to do is erase American history and hide the truth. Seriously, don't be on the wrong side of history. It's like trying to delete the Holocaust article on Wikipedia saying it's some anti-Holocaust or anti-Nazi rant. That's how brainwashed you sound. This is his response to people deleting his entries regarding circumcision on the Walter page of the Silent Hill Wikia. He just seemed to have this breakdown. It was very, it was funny, but then on the other hand, it was very kind of sad.
It's very sad. He clearly was having something going on.
It brings up an interesting conversation, though, about the nature of interpretation, specifically in the series. And I'm not defending him in any way. I just think it's interesting that obviously he went way overboard with something that's, debatably in the game at all to begin with. But it brings up the interesting notion that certain theories, however out there they might be, we lend more credence to them than others. Like, is it connected more directly to Silent Hill 2 because of the Walter stuff? Did they have that planned? That's something that might be a little more legitimate. However, his version of a theory, went way too far. But I think it's interesting how the community kind of filtered that. This theory is not sound versus this other theory. Obviously, it seemed to be more about him than the actual theory, especially how he
Yeah, exactly.
responded
But
to it.
The way
it
that
makes me
he
think
he
back to
presented the theory.
Right.
What were you saying,
the
Amy?
way I was saying that how Jay Blau had once said that how Americans are so literal and the Japanese like to leave some things open ended, but however, you don't put that on a wiki.
Yeah,
That's the
it's.
thing.
I mean, that's the thing is other people were saying, you can theorize about this and you can post about it, but not on the main character page. Put it in a theories page, something like that. It's open to discussion.
I mean, it wasn't like a one-line thing. It was 800 words.
And the thing, most people saw a cut down version of it because when the fighting started, you went, okay, I'll trim it a bit, and it was still paragraphs long even after him trimming it. It's also and just because this isn't something worth bringing up when we get to Homecoming, but he also edited the character Alex Shepard's page to talk about how he thought the game was allegory for Alex being gay. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
he also brought up the circumcision thing there as well, and he cited the schisms as being like circumcised penises. Or
I'm worried if that's what you think it looks like.
Weirdest thing about that, though, especially for the Silent Hill series, is a theory like that might not be too far off, especially when you factor in, again, not that I'm agreeing in any way, shape, or form with stuff, especially after Silent Hill 2 and the deeply sexual nature of that story and the trauma that it talked about. Things like that could be potentially included as allegory, as metaphors, or as visual representations in the game, like the Angela room scene with the tubes and everything. But again, it's how it's presented, and is this theory versus something that you really think happened in the game? I think there's an important distinction.
Well, there's also the issue. There's the issue. I don't remember who I read it from. Somebody talking about this whole thing. Circumcision isn't really a thing in Japan, so it's not something that they would really write about or care about. It just
Wouldn't be
doesn't make
thinking about it.
sense.
Yeah.
So I found the screen cap of his original entry, so I'm gonna read it, and you can see why people thought that this shouldn't be on Walter's page. So it starts off: others believe that circumcision can harm the bond between mother and son, and a man's ability to love and bond with a woman. Circumcision can have an extreme influence on the psyche and have negative effects on the development of the human psyche because a baby's brain is extremely affectable, vulnerable, and susceptible to pain. Circumcision can scar a baby for life into adulthood and harm the healthy development of male sexuality. Circumcision can cause permanent brain damage, permanent psychological damage, psychological brain rewiring, mental illness, trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder, long-term aggravated response to pain, erectile dysfunction, decreased sexual pleasure. The foreskin contains thousands of nerve endings. Death. There have been cases in which circumcised babies died from the extreme pain and blood loss. Foolish,
oh my God.
Foolish, ignorant, gullible, brainwashed, idiotic, and moronic 20th century North American doctors somehow, and the thing got cut off. And there's a picture of Walter as a young boy, and it goes, the little footer, it says, Walter as an innocent boy. That was what was cut out of the Walter Sullivan page. That is
I'm pretty sure half of that aren't even, that's not possible. What is permanent brain rewiring?
I don't know, but it doesn't belong on. It didn't belong on a Wikipedia page for Walter Sullivan. Fine,
people interpret
things like that when
in their way, but it's not good when you put it on a wikia as if it is fact and in the game.
And it's clear that he was going into that with some kind of an agenda beyond just talking about a theory for a video game. Like, it's almost like you can cut and paste whatever you want to talk about. Oh, now that's circumcision, the triangle, the Freemasons triangle behind the $1 bill. That's because of circumcision. It's like, it seemed like he had more to talk about than just Silent Hill.
And the thing that kind of made it worse was he put a lot of work into this Wikia before. I mean, I think I mentioned he had like 40,000 edits to
Yeah, I
this
mean, he
one
was well
page.
respected before this, from what I understand.
Literally, when I go to the wiki to get resources for videos, half the time I see it's uploaded by Alex.
Exactly. He did a whole lot for this wiki.
I think he made me an admin on there. I talked to him, and he was normal, until then.
And when the shit went down, he was just very high and mighty, like, and LOL at me being removed as admin by a random Anon IP user. You do realize the entire site is essentially mine, right? I am the top admin bureaucrat of this site and have been for years. I have 40k edits on the site. The next admin has 13k edits. He just went on a tangent, and
He was on the warpath.
Yeah, over this theory of circumcision in Silent Hill 4. I mean, there's been wilder theories, I'm sure, for Silent Hill. It just seems so strange that this was the hill he chose to die on. Was that Walter was circumcised as a baby, and that's what led him down this path to being a serial killer.
To quote one of my favorite...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to quote one of my favorite response memes, weird hill to die on, OP, but at least you're dead.
Yeah, and it's
the community, did they have more of a problem with what he was saying, like the actual theory itself, or where he was posting it?
They had a problem with where he was posting it. They were like, this just... let me see if I can find a screen cap of the talk board. Give me 1 second. I'm looking at the video Voidberger had made. She put some screen caps in here.
There are a lot of out there fan theories, but they're not necessarily on the main page. I think there's a place for that.
There's like a theories wiki. Okay, I'm having trouble finding it, but basically someone just on the talk page for Walter was just like, this is fine, but I don't think it belongs on the Walter page because there isn't enough evidence in game. This is a fan theory, and it shouldn't be here. Yeah, and he just kind of went off, and because he had the power, he took advantage of his ability to ban people and remove replies. And here we go. Someone said, who removed it, this has nothing to do with Silent Hill. And then like 2 minutes later, Alex is like, yes, it does. You're blatantly removing the effects of circumcision on the psyche, which is a core aspect of personality, and the fact that there's no compensation for circumcision victims / survivors is an injustice, and that's what Silent Hill is. And
oh my god.
And then someone else, more weird and unnecessary political commentary that isn't related to the character. They removed it again. And then he responded, because people need understanding of Walter's circumstances. Seriously, stop trying to remove history.
We don't even know. Like, circumcision, wasn't even part of his thing. Like, it's never like, oh, he was circumcised as well as being abandoned in that room. Where did this come from?
I don't know. And someone said, another edit, I don't quite remember the game being a lunatic anti-male genital mutilation rant, so I figured the article should probably be the same way and remove such. Even if that section is found to be worth keeping, if reinstated, it should probably do more than pay lip service to Sullivan's mental state, rather than being some unhinged polemic something. And then Alex responded with, oh, I already read this. This was in the Variety New York Magazine article, but he's just like, you're a fucking horrible human being for advocating genital mutilation, and went off. So at this point in time, the Wikia kind of already had this reputation of being
a bit shit.
Not really I mean, it has good sources of information. I use it when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about in my summaries and whatnot. But a lot of it, there isn't footnotes or people. A lot of people tend to put their own theories as facts when they're describing certain things within the game. So it kind of had this not good look to it. And here is this admin just pushing his own personal theory as fact and then just going God mode on here and not letting anybody have their say and saying, no, this is the fact. This is what Silent Hill 4 is. Anybody who doesn't see it is a horrible human being. The wiki kind of imploded on itself at this point in time. It's kind
I can
of
only imagine like asking the like Ito or Jeremy Blaustein that question, and just I feel embarrassed for that question to even have them be asked, because you're like, really? Like, one, not only do they not know what you're talking about to begin with, and two, they're like, what?
Yeah. And it's
Like,
such a
this is a
shame.
thing?
It's a shame because in my experience making videos, I use wikis all the time for resources and to refresh my memory. And time and again, I'm always disappointed by other wikis because the Silent Hill one is really well organized and detailed, and just it has so much more that I go to other wikis and I'm like, damn, I miss this. Like, they aren't as detailed and fleshed out. Like, there's been a lot of work put into the Silent Hill wiki, but it has this reputation because of the
40,000
frickin'
edits by Alex. I mean, the guy
Yeah.
spent 6 years working this wiki.
I'm looking at Rourke's article on Rely on Horror right now, and like there's like comments saying that, you know, about how wikias are not reliable or creditable.
Oh, I
But,
constantly
you know,
get that over there.
no, but people are always on about that. But the idea is people can add information, and we're supposed to, you know, help each other out on it.
For
But
fans, by
the-
fans. You're supposed to curate
Yeah,
it,
this-
you know?
Exactly. But this sort of thing can happen, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a shame it got a more of a bad rep because of this whole meltdown. And I feel bad for Alex too, because he did do a lot of work for this site. I had him on my podcast years ago, and he was fine. I don't know what
Well, he
happened.
clearly. I've heard that he's okay now, but I've heard that from other people. I have absolutely no idea.
Okay. Well, I hope he is.
Yeah, me too.
This was just a strange blip, I guess, in Silent Hill fandom. But oh man, so whenever I think of Silent Hill 4, this always kind of pops up in my head, like Circumcision Theory. That brought down a wiki for a little bit here. Yeah, but the game has nothing to do with circumcision. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, it's fine, it's a theory, but it's a theory you can easily go, no. Considering that Japan doesn't even really circumcise their children.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But just the fact that he also brought this into other wikis like Xenogears and XCOM and I don't know where else, it's a little bit strange. It seemed like it was more on his side and his fixation on this particular topic than he was kind of making the medium kind of fit his own views, I guess. Which, I mean, everyone's kind of guilty of doing with their own little theories, but
of course,
this is to the extreme.
He was clearly dealing with something.
Yeah, and I really hope everything's okay now, and that, so that's the history of the circumcision theory. I might not have done it justice, but I will link, of course, in the news post, Voidberger's own recap in January 2016, a Rourke's article, and the New York Magazine article as well. So I guess back to the actual game.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I really enjoyed. I really liked the soundtrack for this game. I thought
it's beautiful.
Room of Angel is a beautiful track. And we already talked about the trailer. Even though Ito didn't do the monster designs, I gotta say I did enjoy, as we talked earlier about the ghosts. The ghost designs were on point, and I don't care what anybody says, those twin victims are really cool looking. Just when they're just standing still and they point at you in the water prison and then do a charge at you, it's like, don't.
Oh, for sure.
Leave me alone.
It's weird. I generally hear them being like, "Oh man, those are just I can't remember too many times where somebody said they were dumb.
I've heard that people think they're goofy, but I like them. Or maybe
I think
People think they're goofy. Come back at the fucking pterodactyls.
air screamers. Yeah, yeah. What did you guys think of some of the other characters in the game? We talked about Eileen and Henry, but what do you think about like Walter and Richard and Jasper? What did you think about the extras in the game? Did you feel that they were, I don't know, how did they compare to other characters in previous games?
I like the characters in the way that, you feel like you're being nosy and spying on these people through the windows, and the way that, Richard's a dickhead and
he was
so on.
awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I enjoyed kind of learning about the tenants, the other tenants of Ashfield Heights through the apartment building, where you kind of went through their apartments, and then you found the paintings, and then the tape of the stalker guy getting beat up. Oh, there was another connection to Silent Hill 2 with Nurse Rachel lived apparently in Ashfield Heights.
Okay.
Yeah, she Nurse Rachel. Well, at least that's the fan theory. I don't know if it was actually confirmed by anybody who actually worked on the game, but there's
I think it's confirmed in the Book of Memories, but I can't say for sure.
Okay. There's a nurse that lived there named Rachel, and people took that to mean that was the Rachel, same Rachel who took care of Mary and Laura at the hospital.
Of course, that said, people have also speculated, based on names, that Mary is related to Alex, I think. People were like, oh, what if it's...
Yeah.
Oh, I dig that theory so much.
I like the idea, because when I was like a teen, I heard that theory. I was like, oh, that's amazing. And I had this idea for, like, I don't think Netflix existed at the time, but like a Silent Hill TV show that would have flashbacks to like their wedding, and Alex would just be there. like chatting up James, and he's just like, yeah, as a kid, he's just like, wow, she's really pretty. And James is like,
well, if I remember right, I think that game kind of shifted hands a couple times, and the name Shepard was picked before it was eventually transferred to the last team. So I feel like maybe that might have been the intent at some point, and it just kind of was lost.
Well, Homecoming
Tom
obviously
did say in an interview with me and CJ that originally there was going to be more direct connection to Silent Hill 2, that Elle was supposed to be Laura from Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
Well, the whole plan was that he was going to get into like fucking Silent Hill Avengers, wasn't it? That, like,
yes.
That Heather and Henry were going to show up at the end, and there's going to be a site. It was supposed to set up a trilogy, wasn't it?
Yep. With
Jesus.
A battle above Toluca Lake between Josh and Alessa.
People are so horrible to Tom Hewlett, and they don't know what he saved us from.
Oh, for sure.
It could have been so much worse.
It could have.
Yeah, poor guy.
There's a part of me,
the part was the worst one.
Yeah. There's a part of me that loves like bad horror and sci-fi that almost wish that game existed, but I also wish it didn't.
I'm glad it doesn't, but I would have loved to see. I would love to see whatever work they had done on it. Like, what was the planning? Had art been finished? Like, I would love to see what that was.
Well, they were far enough along where Tom, when the other director guy got fired finally, Tom still had to rework the whole boogeyman thing to not be Pyramid Head and to be a different creature. They couldn't. He apparently at one point, Boogeyman was like be like a real antagonist to Alex, who's going to chase him through,
as opposed to a cameo.
Yeah. So he was only able to get him down to like a cameo, and then worked in the whole Boogeyman thing with the poems and stuff. So they were far enough along where there's some stuff that they could not remove.
Yeah. Because at one point you've made the assets and stuff. I imagine it's hard to go back at that point.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you probably know more about this than I do, but there also feels like there's a very intentional desire to make Pyramid Head like the face of the series, the same way that Nemesis kind of became for RE. That, I mean, they were using him everywhere.
Well, it seemed like it was something more on the side of, like, for example, Origins. There was a rumor that the Butcher was supposed to be the origin of Red Pyramid
Yeah, like
thing.
proto-pyramid.
Yeah, and then in Homecoming we had him pop up again, where he was more of his look from the movie. I
Yeah.
think at that point Konami went from not liking Pyramid Head's design to realizing that he made a big impact and kind of wanted him to be the mascot of the series instead.
At one point, weren't they
Well-
discussing an adaptation of the movie as one of the next games, and then that fell through because the schedules didn't line up?
I never heard that. That's interesting. Oh, I could definitely see that
We're trying
happening.
to tie the world of the movie into the next game, because you kind of had that with Homecoming with the
Like the
Rust
church.
Yeah, the look of the other world and how it transformed was very similar to how they did it in the movie.
Well, if you look at the church in the game, it's straight up just the church from the movie. Like, it doesn't have the mural. I don't think there's like an organ there now. But
Yeah.
that weird cross design they used in the movie rather than the Halo of the Sun is still on doors and shit. It's in the game. It's just it doesn't have any relevance.
Yeah, so maybe that's a remnant from an earlier build where they were trying to make it tie more directly into the movie design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and I feel like to some extent, yeah, Konami probably pushed Pyramid Head because they wanted a mascot, but also there's the other fact of kind of as fans, we have to admit that there's a point where people who don't play these games look at Pyramid Head and go, "Oh, that's Silent Hill."
Yeah,
Like he's the
he's
face.
so easily he is the
Yeah.
face, he is the mascot.
So I
he's
can see
other than pachinko machines, he's the only Silent Hill thing Konami has acknowledged in like the last 5 years because they keep putting him as a guest character in other games.
Yeah, and the statues and everything that have been coming out.
And the nurses, the Bubblehead nurses.
Yeah.
They
Which
were
are like
both in,
second tier mascot.
they were both in Bomberman, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Which
think
the ones
Pyramid
that get
Head
cosplayed in different conventions. Every time I go, it's either Pyramid Head or a nurse. And like you said, even people who aren't familiar with the games per se will recognize those two characters.
Yeah, and there's and like was it like the one well, I guess there's more official t-shirts now, but I remember back in the day the only t-shirt I could find was a Pyramid Head shirt that said something goofy. It was like speak softly and carry a big sword or something.
Was that
It was
the Hot
very
Topic
dopey.
shirt?
I think so, yeah.
And I remember that came out.
Wow.
That came out. That little line, whatever, came out when the first movie. Yeah, I remember that. It was like a ribbed shirt.
Yeah.
I never got that one, but I remember the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I went for they had a Resident Evil 4 shirt that I loved. It was an orange shirt with a picture of the chainsaw on it, and it said the natives are restless.
You know, it's kind of wild that recently Fangamer did the Silent Hill line, but I don't think there was actually anything. Was there anything Pyramid Head in it?
No.
No,
It
they actually had a
was-
Silent Hill 4 pin,
Well,
which was
I mean,
wild. I
well,
was so happy.
There was Pyramid Head on the Mira shirt, but it was
Right.
more focused. Just it was Mary,
Yeah, it was just like a
Mira,
Silent Hill shirt.
and then
Mhm.
the room door, which was such a cool pin. I love that pin.
Yeah, I bought that
Oh, yeah.
immediately.
So did I.
I wish it's kind of sad that there isn't more merchandise for the other games in the series. There's a lot of merchandise for Homecoming because it got licensed at that point with I just lost the name of the company, but they licensed a bunch of stuff like a wall scrolls, keychains, lunchboxes, all that shit. And then Silent Hill 2 gets all this merch because that's the one everybody likes. Silent Hill 1 needs some merch, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
I would love to have a like I don't know, like it's like Resident Evil has so many cool things. It's got the they just put out like a first aid spray thermos. It's like that's fucking awesome. It is like $100, which isn't as awesome.
Dang.
But
That's expensive thermos, jeez.
Yeah, it was another one of those things that I tweeted about. It's like I want one of these, and then I did the conversion from yen to dollars, and I was like, not that much.
Yeah.
Not for $100. Well, maybe you
Yeah.
could find a cheaper one on eBay or something.
Oh, I can find cheaper versions of things. Yes, just will they be the same quality?
Go to Etsy. Maybe someone made their
Yeah.
own. Yeah.
But the idea of like, how goddamn cool would it be to have a water bottle that was the health drink, or a
Yeah.
lunchbox that was the first aid kit? There's
would
so
be
many
nice.
things you could do with this, and they just refuse.
Yeah. And Fan Gamers stuff like sold out so fast. Like the entire internet was on fire. Even people that I don't see talk about Silent Hill all that often anymore. It's like, clearly you have something here, Konami. It's so sad that like the most we're talking about their big projects right now aren't with them. It's like the Castlevania TV show and the soundtracks that are coming out on vinyl for Silent Hill. It's not anything Konami is doing.
Yeah.
Hey, now they're gonna come out with another gambling machine with downpour
Yeah.
assets
Yay.
in America.
I can't wait to see how badly Downpour Assets aged. I love that game to death, but that is not going to look okay.
No, it's so old now, comparatively.
And it honestly, again, I love Downpour. That game didn't look that spectacular at the time.
Looked okay.
Well, it had really good atmosphere, but it some of it's, I think, it's people in it. The moving parts were a little rougher.
Yeah, the assets themselves were okay, but there was clearly budget constraints in places.
But
poor Downpour.
It didn't run very well either. But now with Xbox One, I hear it runs.
Yeah, the
a lot
Xbox
better.
One port runs perfect as far as I've experienced.
I know CJ always says this, but why can't they bring a PC version of it? I would love to play a PC version of it.
Well, remember, fans basically did port it to PC until they got C&D'd.
That's true.
I'm trying to remember it wasn't exactly Downpour. They it was like a fan game kind of, but it was just Downpour.
Yeah, it was a Russian guy who made his own Silent Hill game using Downpour's assets. And I was like, you can't do that, dude. What are you doing? And it got locked. But we are straying far from Silent Hill for the room.
Yeah.
We are talking about Downpour. Is there anything else you guys want to go in about the game in terms of how do you view it compared to the others in the series? Do you think we mentioned kind of how it was production was rushed and they probably didn't have as much money due to their reusing the environments and some of the hidden stuff on the discs that fans were able to find. Where would you have wanted it to go? Like, I personally did not like the repeating levels. I wish we saw more of the actual town of Silent Hill in the game. Am I alone in thinking that, or?
I enjoyed
the fact that it was a little distant and you were seeing it from the outside. I think that was the cool thing about Silent Hill 3 was half of the game was not set there, so it kind of made you yearn for it. And then Silent Hill 4, the story was tangential, so that the actual environments were as well. So you kind of got the sense of the town without always having to set it there. I think if every single Resident Evil, say, was set in Raccoon City, that would eventually get old. Like, as cool as that setting is, it's almost like Pyramid Head. If you keep reusing it, people are going to get sick of that cool thing, whether it's a lightsaber or a proton pack or whatever. If that cool thing is used every single time, then it's not going to be cool anymore. And I think, speaking of what we were talking about earlier, I think the environments in the game are one of my favorite parts. I know both the water prison and the forest area. That is, especially the forest area, since you go back to it twice, it always has that perpetual kind of twilight backlit fog feel.
Mm-hmm.
And say what you will about the story or the gameplay or the execution, I think this and the soundtrack continue that great Silent Hill pedigree of atmosphere. Say what you want about the story, this game still has atmosphere to spare.
Oh, for sure.
I agree.
I think the game, we've discussed how it definitely wasn't funded as much as it should have, and it was kind of going to struggle no matter what because of that. But I think it also was ahead of its time when you consider the mechanics that it uses, the unkillable enemies, the being chased by a monster, the first-person camera. You think about games that would come later like Amnesia and Outlast, that's the new norm of horror. It's its own genre now, and Silent Hill 4 kind of tried to dip its toe in that years before and just didn't quite get there. If Team Silent had been allowed to make another game and really perfect what they were working with, I just can't imagine what we would have gotten. And unfortunately,
I'm still sad we didn't get the whole fear and the light. They talked about doing that with Silent Hill 5, and then it was taken away and given to another team. Oh, we know we never really talked about much about the defense items in this game. The Sword of Obedience, you're only given, what, 3?
Yeah, so you have to make a decision.
You have to make decisions about which ghosts you're going to pin in their world, unless you wanted them chasing you through.
The only decision is Cynthia.
Well, it was Cynthia, and I did not like Jasper, because the whole fire, he was always on my butt.
Oh, yeah.
And Richard sucked, too.
Richard is pretty awful because he's fast.
Yeah. So I tend to go with those ones. And the thing was, you always had to go back and get the sword if you wanted to pin somebody else in the following world. It wasn't there a part where you had to go down a staircase and all these ghosts would just come out of the woodwork to come chase you?
They'd smack you and you'd fall down the stairs 100 feet.
Oh man.
Yeah, that
Fuck
sucked.
that shit.
Tree
I loved
monster.
that thing. Oh, it was hilarious. They were called Wallmen or something.
Oh, the Wallmen, yes.
And
that was
horrible.
That was the big boss thing too. At the bottom of the stairs
that was a cool boss fight.
Was a big wall guy.
I'm a big fan of them Wallmen group. Great music.
I did think it was cool that, yes, even though the ghosts were unkillable, you were at least given a kind of a reprieve by if you picked up the swords of obedience and you actually made use of them. But yeah, fuck those ghosts. I hate them so much. And Eileen not keeping up with me. Come on, Eileen.
Man.
He's a hero, right?
I just liked how you couldn't really explore certain areas because of the ghosts. Because I like to, at some point, I like to go around and explore and look at everything. And this ghost is on your ass, and you don't have a sort of obedience.
That is a weakness where in previous Silent Hill games you were kind of encouraged to take in the atmosphere and explore, but a consequence of the ghosts is that makes it hard to do.
Yeah. That and what I thought was kind of funny was Walter is the antagonist, but when you first meet him, he's just kind of there chilling, and then it's really only at the prison, forest, he starts shooting at you, right? Starts attacking you, and then the prison he starts chasing you. But then you get back to the apartment building, and he's back to ignoring you, just sitting on the stairs. Oh, did you guys take the doll?
Yes.
I honestly feel
like the doll to me actually feels like a really tender moment, and I get people that tell me, oh, it was on purpose to try and get him, and I'm like, well, what does that serve? At this point, he's not hunting Henry. The hauntings don't actually help him with it. That doesn't serve any part of his ritual. He literally just gives Henry the doll because he wants to. And it's such a strange, endearing moment of humanity in the middle of this murder fest. I adore it.
It's almost like it was both their doll.
Yeah, that doll sucked. Putting babies in the inventory box. Thanks, game. Now I'm down to 9 slots because I picked it up and I can't put it down. That was a good troll move by the developer. Of course you're gonna pick it up. I picked it up my first time through, and then I realized my mistake.
Because I'm a hoarder and I collect everything,
Exactly.
Well, that's video games. Is they teach you to collect everything, but some games actively fuck you over for it, like Code Veronica.
Oh wait, how did Code Veronica fuck you over?
Code Veronica doesn't tell you that you will switch to Chris halfway through the game.
Yes.
So you've used up everything. Yeah. So Chris is just SOL.
He's like, no ammo for me. I guess it's realistic though.
I guess.
It's like, sorry, Chris. Yeah. Ah, man. Did the escort mission piss you guys off too much, or is it just me?
Piss me off.
Yeah, it's not good. She doesn't. I don't mean to keep referencing Resident Evil, but it's not like she's Ashley, where you can be like, bitch, dumpster. She's just vulnerable, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, on the other side, she can't actually die. You can still win the game, and so I never really paid attention to saving her.
No, but I want to get it done, and she's getting smacked by shit. I'm like, God, fucking stop.
I never got to the point where she got so messed up she started speaking in tongues and stuff. Did you guys get to that point?
I did.
No.
I love that. That's part of the reason I really like
That's
her.
cool. I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah, she gets really creepy if you let her get messed up. And honestly, I think I really like the bad ending the best of all the endings. So to me, playing the game that way is just so much more haunting.
Yeah, she becomes creepy just by herself when she gets fucked up. I know there's a trick, isn't there, where you could just put her and put all the holy candles around her. And
Yeah, I remember reading that in a magazine with all the candles.
Yeah, if you use the candles on her, it gets rid of some or all of the curse and enough to keep you from getting the bad ending.
I know in the final battle you can run up to her, can't you, and put a candle down, and it kind of slows her down a little bit. But I mean, she still power walks.
I haven't tried that.
I haven't tried that one.
At least that's what I read on. Well, I don't know if it was GameFAQs or the wiki app, but I was like, yeah. Usually by that point, I'm like, well, sorry, Eileen, you're gonna probably die then. Power walking into that.
I want to talk a little bit about the ending, just how that's set up and the Event Horizon ball and the giant boss, because that to me that was the standout encounter of the game. You have lots of small stuff. You have the wall painting guys, but that one really that's a Silent Hill boss.
Using the spears of truth. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Spears of truth? You stabbing, yeah. So I guess for the final battle, you go down the hole and you see this room. You have this weird, like, fleshy being, head, shoulders, arms, and
It looks similar to the ghosts that come out of Henry's walls.
Yeah, it does. And then there's all these little things with spears, and basically what you need to do is you run up to Walter, and you're supposed to use the umbilical cord, which allows you to then pick up the spears and spear the big guy. And that hurts Walter, because Walter is shooting at constantly. And you gotta get all the spears in there for Walter to die. And it can get kind of frustrating when, for some reason, the umbilical cord will not be used when you're right next to Walter. It's like, God damn it. That boss fight is pretty intense, especially when Eileen is power walking. You're like, I don't want her to die with the Doom machine.
I really enjoyed the Jodorowsky references in that also, which I think I talked about in Silent Hill 3. But yeah, like the bodies on the walls, it has, I think it was Holy Mountain, where it has all the bodies and they represent the planets and they're like swirling around in a circle.
That's pretty heavily referenced in the game.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. It's funny because, again, like Silent Hill 1, the developers took very liberally from established movies and books and things like that. It's not an interpretation of Red Rum. It's literally Red Rum written on a window somewhere. But just like the first game, it's done in a way that feels fresh when it's inserted into a video game world. Whereas maybe another game, it might feel like a ripoff. But I remember when I first played it, I wasn't quite sure what to do. It took me kind of a second to understand, the spears. And honestly, the most challenging part about that is Walter kept shooting at you, like you said, Whitney, like he never stops. And you can't really engage him directly. I remember I would hit him with the axe a couple of times, which ended up being my favorite weapon in the game. But that only kind of delays him. You really have to get those spears quickly and stab the big giant guy.
Yeah, it just kind of proves that the whole Walter we are seeing is just more like a projection, and that the real one is just kind of hanging back, and that's his real weakness right there.
For sure.
Yeah,
that works well.
Also, he never runs out of bullets, does he?
No, he got that infinity code. He's wearing a bandana.
He's cheating.
He was able to pick up all the ammo you couldn't fit in because your inventory was full.
Oh, you know what? We never really talked about who he looked like. He looks like Kurt Cobain, doesn't he?
Yep, I was going to say that earlier.
Yeah. And some say Brad Pitt, others say Kurt Cobain. I think it's more Kurt
I
Cobain.
think mostly Kurt Cobain, yeah. Silent Hill, the entire town is just populated with 90s celebrities.
It sure is, yeah.
We didn't mention, and I don't know how big this theory was. I just remember seeing it on probably fanfic.net or Tumblr at the time, when Downpour came out. The idea, Henry Downpour, Jesus, Henry and Murphy looked alike.
Yeah, people thought that. I think before his name was revealed, they were like, "Oh my god, it's."
Which I think is more just the general white guy protagonist clone issue
they all
going
look
on.
the same.
But I did kind of like the idea that people were trying to tie him together in fan works, like they were brothers or something.
Hey, but he did find his apartment in Silent Hill.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense because
cool part.
That's not. Oh well, it was a cool.
I've always
Easter,
seen that as
Easter egg.
It's just Easter egg.
Yeah.
I did also like Jasper, his shirt. He had Incubus on his shirt. I thought that was a nice little tie to Silent Hill 1.
Yeah, well, that sort of thing was always indicative to me of Silent Hill being able to have fun, whereas I think a lot of fans take the series really, really way too seriously.
Yeah, they
It's like
do.
some of this stuff is just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I mean, like, obviously there's obvious things like the dog ending and the UFO endings like that, but I don't know, they're not everything we're seeing has a deeper meaning. Some of it is just, I don't know, silly. Every video game is like that. There's always going to be some dorky thing.
Yep.
Devs are people too, and they like being silly.
So I think the story in 4 is a lot better than 5. I'm not really a big fan of Homecoming. But I think I had more fun playing Homecoming than I did Silent Hill 4.
I'd agree with that. I mean, we can talk about it more when we talk about Homecoming is probably my most played Silent Hill for that very reason. It's just fun to play. It's not a good Silent Hill game because of that, but it's a fun game. Which, I mean, I don't know, flip the coin, I guess. But I would definitely say the same with Silent Hill 4. 4 is kind of arduous to play, which I don't know. I don't know if you can weigh the pros and cons of that, but it's definitely an aspect of it. It's that a lot of it is a lot slower and more plotting than Silent Hill 1, 2, or 3. With having to go back to the item box, having to things like Walter and Eileen just existing for the sake of slowing your progress down. That it's just it reaches a point where you're like, just fucking and then getting to the second half where it's just the first half, but
now eviler.
Yeah, it's just like, come on.
I didn't dislike the gameplay, but I wanted to like it more than I ended up liking it.
Yeah.
Which isn't, again, it's not to say that it's not fun, but some of the more arcadey stuff, the repetition, it was a little more challenging than it maybe had to be.
I'm actually the total opposite of Hill 4. I've played 4 the most of any of them, probably. I don't know. I really I think it comes down.
Can you repeat, because you cut off on my end?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So
I don't really enjoy playing Homecoming as much, but I've played 4 the most of all of them, and I think it comes down to the kind of gamer, I guess, that you are, like the kind of game you enjoy playing, because I like that sort of slow pace, meditative almost game.
I should add a modifier.
You played it, or was it more in like repeat playthroughs that you kind of got into that play style?
Probably repeat play. I mean, I started playing this so long ago that I forget. Though it's funny, I actually know the exact date of the first time I finished playing it because I sat down and wrote out a whole page in my diary of the time about the game because I had that many thoughts on it. I've been obsessed with it ever since.
That's cool.
Well, I wanted to make a modifier to my statement about Homecoming being fun. Silent Hill 4 is a game that I play when I want a Silent Hill experience. I turn the lights out, I put on headphones, I experience it. Homecoming, I turn the audio off and I put on Game Grumps on my phone. That's what I mean by having a better time.
It is a bad horror, it's like a bad horror movie. You watch them fun,
Yeah. It's they're two very different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a Silent Hill fanfic.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But that's something we can go further in when we get to Homecoming. Though the next game will be Origins, Rourke's favorite.
I haven't even finished playing that one. The only one I've not finished.
I do actually like Origins. I mean, we can talk about when we get my history with it. Regardless, I think it's a good, fun game. But experience.
I don't dislike any individual main one, but for me there are obvious, weaker entries than others. And I'll be the guy that says it, after 4, they're all kind of fan fiction to me. And I take them as okay, well, this is the one where, in an alternate universe, if they kept making Silent Hill games, this is what we got, and just based on that, I'm like, yeah, they're okay. I mean, I think Origins was the first one that I was not excited about when they announced it, because it was, another like Silent Hill 0 explaining the backstory. I'm like, no, we don't need this. And I remember initially when it was the first developer, they were showing screenshots and some early footage. I was like, ooh, that doesn't even look like a good game, like, period, like, regardless of if it's a Silent Hill game. And then it wasn't only until
screenshots, like wasn't there like a purple demon or something?
Yeah, it was a weird,
like a giant thing
guy
in the middle of the road. And it just ended up, it looked very simple and kind of what you'd expect from someone to make a quote unquote Silent Hill game. And it wasn't really until after the second team got a hold of it and I started seeing small things, and I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll give this a shot. And I ended up getting a PSP just for that game. I got a couple other ones, but that was the game I got it for. And I even got the PSP with the attachment you could hook into your TV. So ironically, I ended up playing all of it on the regular TV anyway. But
me too.
Yeah, after 4, I mean, they were kind of on their own, and 4 was really the last one that felt like that. What is to me essentially Silent Hill is that Eastern point of view on Western horror, and you can't synthesize that or reproduce that any other way, especially if you're a Western developer. It's almost like a Western developer taking Japanese, translating it back into English. It's like, no, like that's
or
that's
like trying to make a movie as deliberately bad as The Room. No, I'm not bringing that up because they're the same name, but like
someone had to.
The Room is bad because of the person that was behind it. You try to replicate that, it's just going to be bad without being charming like The Room is.
You can't be self-consciously sincere, like, because The Room the movie is bad because it's a sincere attempt at making a real movie.
Yeah.
The guy who made it thought he was making a real movie, but everyone else knew better. But with the other games after Silent Hill 4, they were trying to tap back into the energy of what made the first 4 special. And I don't know, Whitney, maybe you can agree with me on this, since I guess we're around, and Amy too, I guess. We're around the same ages where we remember when 4 came out. I got it when it came out. I'm pretty sure day 1.
I
think
day 1.
everyone starting with 2 I got on day 1, and 4 was it felt like the last one in that series, and then it ended up being that.
Yeah, well, it definitely,
it's funny because my point, my point was it kind of got I guess equal good and bad criticism at the time, but in the Silent Hill community overall it was seen as the black sheep. And it's so funny looking back. Now we've had at least 4 quote unquote main entries in the series since then. And
I think it's 5.
Silent Hill 4 is mild in comparison to the criticism that's leveled against stuff like Homecoming and or Book of Memories.
People act like Homecoming murdered their mom.
Yes.
It's so funny to look back and go, yeah, Silent Hill 4 really isn't that bad, is it, guys?
Yeah, people did rage about Silent Hill 4 when it came out, and then like years later, all of a sudden, oh, it's just misunderstood. It's so great. Why do people say it's bad? It's the best. It's the best one. They kind of forget about their original
Visionist history. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is again, I'm the Resident Evil guy, so from that. But I keep thinking about people like when Resident Evil 7 was announced, there was a huge backlash from the hardcore fan base. Like, this isn't Resident Evil, it's just an Outlast clone, it's a PT clone. And it came out, it's like, oh no, it's actually a pretty good Resident Evil game. It just happens to be first person. And thinking about the same thing happened with Resident Evil 4. This isn't Resident Evil, and now it's generally regarded as one of the greatest games ever made. And Silent Hill 2 had the exact same thing. When that came out, people were bitching about it being a psychological game. Oh, it's too weird. It's too, nothing's real. It's all in your head. It's like a dream. And now it's regarded as the greatest horror game ever made. And
I think the moral of the story is the fans suck always.
Yes.
and they don't know what they want.
They don't know what they want. Yeah.
And they will bitch no matter what.
Exactly.
I still get people commenting on my videos all the time about how Silent Hill 4 and Silent Hill 3 aren't real games.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, all the time. Not to even mention what people say about when I put out a Homecoming video. Oh, man.
It's so great because I've seen a lot of that too, where people walk back the games that they accept. And it ends up feeling, I don't know how familiar any of you are with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it reminds me of this quote from it. It's like, some people felt that coming down from the trees had been a bad move. Others felt that they should have never left the oceans. It's just like, he keeps walking back. It's like, well, I thought Silent Hill was better when it was just a design document. It's like, fuck off.
What do you guys think overall of, I played 4 when it came out. I'm not trying to be that guy. It was cool, but, when it was a garage band kind of a thing. But I think there is a difference between a perspective from someone, whether it be movie, book, or game, who experienced it right when it came out versus someone who maybe came into it later or maybe out of sequence in the series. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but what do you guys think just about the perspective from somebody maybe coming into the series later on and experiencing the game that way versus someone who took it in right when it came out?
I think it's also a thing of graphics and so on, and people say, oh, Silent Hill 1 is terrible, and they can't even play it, but because they're so used to photorealism.
That was cutting edge at the time, and it looked awesome. So did Metal Gear. Those were at the top of the game when they came out.
I played them all as they came out. And so they look awesome, to me.
Still look awesome to me too. I can't not see it anymore.
I think what the issue is, going in like right when it came out, we had expectations because we had played the other ones, and going in and finding it so different gameplay wise probably affected us more than, let's say, someone who had no history with those previous titles. Maybe they came in with Homecoming or the movie and they just went in and started Silent Hill 4. They don't have this preconception of what a Silent Hill game should be and should act, and I think are probably more forgiving of the aspects of Silent Hill 4 that may not have landed or not worked as well as maybe the developers had hoped. So I think a lot of fans who grew up with 1 through 3 ahead of it and then anticipated the release, got it, and then their disappointments are probably more blown more out of proportion compared to maybe those who just jumped into Silent Hill 4 without that history. And I think that's where the disconnect comes from.
AJ, when did you first play the game, and how do you feel that influenced your perspective of the game and going forward for the series?
Well, I saw the film first, and then I believe I played 2 and 3 around the same time and beat Silent Hill 4 in 2010, which, as I said, I know the exact date because of being a nerd that wrote everything down. I remember at the time, like I said, just being really captivated by it. I loved 3 because of Heather. I loved 2 because of the story, but 4, just the experience really spoke to me in a way, and it's hard to explain. Like I said earlier, I really identified with Henry and his kind of behaviors. Having ADHD, part of that experience is something called hyperfocus. Either you are on or you are off. And Silent Hill 4, I was on. That was my thing. And I just, I mean, it kind of says something that I started making videos at that time on the series and haven't stopped since. And 4 is really what did that for me.
Into 4? Did you have any expectations going into 4 based on the community's reaction to it since its release?
I had no idea.
Negative or positive? Okay.
I was not really a kid that was on the internet much in those kind of. I was on fanfic.net and Quizilla, so I wasn't really
You basically went in
attached
blind.
to the fandom. Yes, I went in entirely blind.
Have you heard about our excursions into fanfic?
No, I have not.
During our quick aside, I won't make it too long. During our charity stream, I went out and I found fan fiction of a very fan fiction-y variety. And I read a story about Chris. Well, actually, I tried to start with Silent Hill stories, but they were all not fun. They were all very boring and
they're
dry.
very, very, yeah.
But I found one that was Chris from Resident Evil finding Wesker, like deep in the bowels of an Umbrella lab, but Wesker was like a feral cat man.
Oh, God.
It and Chris immediately becomes, let's use the word infatuated.
Yes,
and
I know where this is going.
It escalates from there. And in the middle of me reading this, so we ended up getting, it's like somebody donated like $3,000 or something. It's like, now I know what to do.
We got like $1,800 or something.
Oh my God.
This is a great moment for me to plug something that I do, which is very similar to this. I started a thing called Fanfic Friday where I read my own fanfic I wrote.
And it's actually
people donate money. Oh, thank you. And I actually, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The first one I ever read was for a charity stream, and it was Chris / Wesker. And it was, there was so much happening.
Was he
there
a
was
cat boy? Was he a
No,
cat boy?
there were car chases in the wilderness and weird stuff. Just lots of weird dialogue and tropiness. And then I went on to read one about myself shipping a vague OC of my own self with Dante from Devil May Cry. So that was.
I remember listening to the one with Chris and Wesker. I only listened to a bit of it, and I'm always doubtful. I always have a prejudice going in for fanfic because it is just that sometimes where it's just like element A and element C, and now they do this. Now Chris and Wesker go to the supermarket, and it's exactly what you think it is, and it's very like Wesker. We have to get to the cereal. Very formulaic and very predictable.
Wesker's Diary, January 4th. Chris didn't eat the stromboli I made. Was there something wrong with it, or was there something wrong with me?
But it's funny because she was AJ was doing the voices and taking on the personas, and the way it was actually written was actually good. So I was kind of taken aback, and I kept listening, and I was waiting for it to devolve, and it never really did. So I was like, this isn't very entertaining. Good fan fiction. But if you guys get a chance, check it out because it's good fan fiction, and I don't really know how to deal with that.
Give me a link to it, and I will put the actual fanfic link.
I will get that over here.
I guess my what if comic I just tweeted is fanfic. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that is what it is.
It's a what if. It's an AU.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go find me on Twitter, I'm at Cecil the Cat. I just did a 4-page comic of what if Leon had arrived on time for his first day in the RPD, and the horrifying butterfly effect that would have on the rest of the series.
I like how everyone thought it was Claire shooting Annette.
Yeah, that's my fault. I could have made it clearer.
You should not have given her a ponytail.
But that's the thing. She has a ponytail now.
Yeah.
Damn it. Capcom fucking me again. At least the last time I enjoyed it. Anyway, let's move on.
Where are we?
Who knows?
I think at this point we're kind of wrapping up.
Just any last thoughts? Oh wait, I do have to get your thoughts on. So what did you think of the singing on the soundtrack with the Cradle of the Forest or whatnot? Were you guys a fan of that?
Deep in the forest night, children dance the waltz, they laugh, whispering hand in hand, just like children like to do.
Oh, I dig it. I know that a lot of people don't. CJ always makes fun of it, but I don't know. I like how deep that guy's voice is.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how weird and kind of I don't know how to describe it. Like, that song doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But I like that about it. Although my favorite track in the whole game is Rain of Brass Petals, and it has that middle verse about "I am the second, a voice in a faceless crowd" is one of my favorite lyrics in any of the songs.
Correction, Rain of Brass Petals is from Silent Hill 3, not Silent Hill 4. Yeah.
Although that's a different singer. I don't know who the hell that guy is. But that's not the dude that sang the other song.
I thought
took all the songs kind of in stride as the series got more vocal, starting with 3, and you had Mary Elizabeth Glenn and others provide vocal tracks. I don't know that I expected it in 4, but I enjoyed the variety of it. And just like the gameplay and the story, how it's kind of, breaking new ground and going in different directions. I liked that it was something different. I liked that it wasn't the exact same thing over and over again. And in combination with, Room of Angels and other tracks, it really gave 4 its own unique voice and didn't really feel like it was copying or aping off any of the other soundtracks in the series thus far.
Did you guys get the pre-order soundtrack when you?
Oh, I think I got 2. I got 1 sealed and 1 I actually used.
Same here. Same here. So when the game came out, it was like a pre-order bonus. You got the limited edition Silent Hill 4 soundtrack. It came in
edition cardboard sleeve.
Yep, cardboard sleeve. And Silent Hill 4 in Japan, when it came out, it came also with a mini disc, didn't it? In the game as well.
That's right.
What's interesting with the Japanese soundtrack is there was a whole second disc that was sort of just like a red play in Japanese that had
It's a loud, angry Japanese man screaming at you.
Yeah, I don't know what it had to do with Silent Hill 4, but it was there. It was like a different story. I didn't look too deeply into it. But yeah, soundtrack kick-ass. Always. Akira brought it with the sound work, definitely. Except with the burping patient demons, that was a really odd choice. I don't know why he did it, but it makes me laugh every time I'm in that section.
Look at this weird burping monster. Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
People burp in Japan?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
It's not a scary sound, I could say that much. It's just
The Silent Hill burping meltdown of 2019.
But yeah, anything else you guys want to add before I wrap this up?
I think you guys were kind of already saying it, but for any fans that haven't gotten the chance to play it, I would say, know that it isn't like the other classic games. It has weird changes. It stumbles in a few places, but I definitely think it's worth it. I think that, honestly, I think its biggest problem is that it's a Silent Hill game. I think if it didn't have that branding, it would be this very cool, unique, creepy game that would sit on that same shelf of obscurity that something like Siren does, where it has this very tight-knit group of people that really love it. Obviously it probably did better than it would have as a Silent Hill game, but I think that also put a lot of expectations on it. So I'd say go into it just aware that it's not 1, 2, or 3, and it's also not 5 through 9. It's just its own weird thing.
Yeah.
Still valid, but still a valid entry.
I always tell people, try it for yourself. We might not enjoy playing it. Well, AJ does. But that doesn't mean you won't. I always say try a game for yourself. Don't always just believe the naysayers or whatnot. Just, you gotta form your own opinions about this stuff, because what we might not like might speak to you. So definitely give the game a try. It was definitely fun for me to revisit it after so many years, because I forgot a lot about the game. But replaying it it did highlight for me my own frustrations with it when I first played it back when it came out. But you might enjoy being chased by unkillable ghosts and an escorting a woman who likes to get stuck behind doorways and not follow you through a train, so you have to
Definitely
backtrack.
tense.
Yeah.
And certainly since, nobody anywhere is going to make a game like those old PS2 survival horror games. Go after it. It will be a whole new experience to you if you've never played it before. From that era. It's a bygone era. Not to mention, Silent Hill's dead as shit. Play it. Do yourself a favor. There'll never be another console released Silent Hill game, and I stand by that.
Never say never. I didn't say, I was like, Deadly Premonition 2 will never happen, and I could have staked my life on it, and then I was surprised.
Well, so far I'm 1 for 1 on not having to eat my shoes over Death Stranding. So.
Say good console release and you'll be covered.
Yeah, well, mostly I can see Silent Hill being brought back for another thing like what the hell is it called? That mobile game where you're in a maze?
Mm-hmm.
Mobile game in a maze? Orphan?
It's like Silent Hill The Escape or something?
Yeah, The Escape.
Oh, the mobile.
Yeah, it was, you could turn left or right, and sometimes there's a nurse, sometimes there's a pyramid head, and you had to go through the maze until you got to the end. And I think the general consensus was, this is dog shit.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good that they don't have more games. I think there's always, I think I say this every podcast we do, but I think in a way, Silent Hill as a series is like the dinosaurs. It had its chance and it did what it needed to do, and we keep hoping for the next perfect Silent Hill. As good as PT and Silent Hills looked, up until that point, they had been trying all sorts of ideas, and I think that elusive perfect Silent Hill might be just that, sort of this imaginary idea. I think Silent Hill as a series had its chance, and it had a decent amount of entries to explore all the different kinds of themes it had, but maybe in its DNA, it just didn't have enough in it to just continually every year have a game. And I think with Silent Hill 4, we were starting to approach that sort of zenith creatively, where they're trying new things. Some are working, some aren't. But I think in a way, it's nice that we didn't get Silent Hill X12, and where it's so far away, or it's so different then that it's lost any kind of semblance of what made it good to begin with, or familiar to people.
And everyone's so concerned with whether or not Konami could, they aren't stopping to think of Konami.
Now they're slapping on Funko Pops and they're selling it.
That's a fair point, but I think my feeling on it is that the way it ended and the way that Konami, even basically from Silent Hill 2, when it didn't do as well in Japan and Konami got upset, they basically doomed every game afterwards. They've never had a fair shot. And seeing Capcom and how it's revitalized so many of its older franchises and done really well by them, just imagine that happening for stuff like Silent Hill and Castlevania. And I don't think it's going to happen for a while. I don't even know if it ever will, but if it will be a long time. It'll be when Konami is looking down the barrel of a gun saying, crap, where can we get money now? And
I think it is good that Capcom is doing stuff like RE7 and a new game, and then RE2
DMC5.
remake and RE3. Yeah, they really seem to care about stuff that they haven't before. And I think the difference between RE7 and RE2 versus maybe 5 and 6 is the new stuff that's coming out is actually stuff that people kind of care about and want, versus just sort of retreading 4. Let's put 4 in, in the daytime, or sort of kind of go back to the zombies in 6, but not really. But with Silent Hill, I think one of the biggest things that, and maybe I'm the only guy that on the internet that thinks this, but every time I hear fuck Konami and Konami's evil, and it's like they've always treated this series like crap, my counter argument to that, and it's real simple, is, but Konami gave us Silent Hill. Say what you will about how they gave us, how it doled it out. The Konami that I grew up with came out with Castlevania, Contra, all the classics from the NES and Super Nintendo era, and then it also gave me one of my favorite series of all times. So whatever else they did to fuck that up or never really give it a fair shot, they still gave everybody what we loved initially.
We got it by
So
accident,
again,
though.
I'm not saying
Sure.
I'm not
I
saying
mean,
don't fuck Konami, but also
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like it's almost like complaining about an ex that you broke up with 10 years ago at this point. That's also a corporation. It seems maybe a little misguided.
Well, that's the thing. Is there a corporation?
Yeah.
I'm never really there for like the
Yeah, they're
things
not
that
your
are
friend.
good that come from corporations inevitably come from the good people who are in there.
I also think it's. I've heard that argument for you. You know, Konami gave me Castlevania. It gave me. It's like, yeah, this is 35 years ago, though. I mean, it's it is a different company, different people,
different
work
people.
there now.
Because they had like awesome artists and things back in the day.
And I still all the same people that brought me those games. You know, I just got Bloodstained. That game is fucking awesome, and 90% of the staff is from Konami that left. You know, we have games like Gravity Rush from the guy that most considered to be the creator of Silent Hill. We have so many cool things that have come out of people from Konami. That tells me that Konami, if anything, probably held back the good things that we have. I mean,
in a lot of ways, though, when people say Konami, I also include the creative people because, you know, Ito and Sato and Jeremy Blaustein, they were employees or contractors of Konami. So
sure, but then you look at someone like Tom Hewlett, who had to fight tooth and nail to get Homecoming in the state that it is, and people still hate that game.
No, I get that, but I think a lot of that, I don't know, that's misguided. But I think some of this hate is just kind of like I know I'm talking to the internet, but it's like, let's move on. Like, I get it, but like talking about the ex, you're still not with 10 years later.
No, at this point, well, that's sort of the thing I was talking in terms of, though there will never be another Silent Hill game. Is mostly my point is I don't think it matters. I mean, at this point, Konami has made it so
come out,
clear.
you know? Yeah.
Downpour came out in 2012, and so did Shattered Memories or Book of Memories. Yeah, it's been years. Konami clearly has no interest, and I mean, I've moved on personally. I make jokes about it, but I don't expect anything
It's
from
gonna
them.
live on through the fans, and hopefully
And
fans will get less shitty about it.
There's plenty of cool shit happening elsewhere. I mean,
and the
Resident Evil has
replayability of it.
completely revitalized itself.
Yeah, you can always go back and play the original games. You don't have to play the ones you don't like. It's just like with anything, you know.
Although you do have to go back into fucking PSX on PC to play half of them.
Yeah.
But which is something that I am bitter about, is that Konami apparently hates making money and refuses to do the bare minimum and just release shit again.
I know.
I honestly just think there's a lot of really behind the times folks, which is true of a lot of, honestly, Eastern video game companies. Like Nintendo is notoriously behind the times in ways. And I think the people at Konami just are really behind. And eventually there may come someone who comes to that company who's like, wow, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. But it's all it's all luck and random. So who knows I guess my thought is, I love what we have, and I'm happy where we are. And who knows what the future will bring? Maybe we'll get more, and if we don't, that's cool too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Again.
now that we're all good and sad.
I was about to say, now that we're bummed out.
There's still no more Silent Hill.
Play Claire. Claire on the PC is a really neat sort of Silent Hill clone.
That's another good point, where we don't have Silent Hill in name, perhaps, but we have all the games that were inspired by it. Everything from Outlast to Layers of Fear. I mean, every month it seems like there's a good quality survival horror title that has deep ties to the Silent Hill series and its influence.
Because so many people were inspired by this series.
I was just going to recommend, there's a indie game that came out, and only the first chapter's out. I streamed it. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but it's Simulacrum. Yeah. It's very, very, very like Silent Hill. I think you guys would like it.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah. So if you guys are looking for a Silent Hill experience, I definitely say
they're
that
out there.
one.
And they're free from the corporate banner that is modern Konami.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Support indie devs, man.
You know, and Detention's very Silent Hill-like too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is older, of course. I mean, this is from the PS2 era, but I'd say this is an old game. This is from PS2 era, but I think a lot of people haven't actually played it, and it's on Steam, and it goes on sale for like $1 every couple of months. I deeply what the hell's the word I'm looking for? I'm a little burned out.
Yeah.
I highly encourage you to try out the Obscure games, Obscure and Obscure 2.
Oh my god.
Or Obscure the Aftermath, as it's known on Wii. They're both really, really good games they're kind of in between Silent Hill and Resident Evil, but they're a lot of fun.
Is it the one where you're in high school?
Yeah, the first one you're in high school, and the second one
yeah,
you're in college.
Yeah, I did start playing one of those, and I never finished.
Yeah, it's Obscure 1 has I think it's Sam Riegel's very first vocal performance, and boy does it show.
That's what I remember from those games was the voices and the dialogue.
But like if you're into cool, moody, spooky PS2 games, I definitely recommend them. Obscure 2 has one of the most amazing soundtracks I've ever heard that wasn't from Resident Evil. It has like a full chorus and all sorts of shit. It's great.
Yeah, they're both wait, this is not Obscure. Never mind. I thought it was $9. I'm looking for it. Why isn't it coming up? I'm
oh
on
god, did it
Steam.
get removed from Steam?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's coming up.
Hold on. Because I have it in my library. Let me see. Let me look.
Is it 9 Clues to the Ward? Why does that keep popping up?
Find groups to store page. No, it's here. Obscure.
Am I spelling
I
it
don't know
wrong?
what.
Huh.
OBSCURE.
That's what I did.
It is currently $6.99.
Don't know why it's not popping up for me. That's really weird.
Yeah, that is weird. You can also get a package deal with both of them for $14.99.
Maybe I had a search filter on or something.
Maybe. Call now.
I will have to. Maybe I'll stream those then.
You should. Know that Obscure 1 is a little clunky in that very PS2 era way, but Obscure 2 improves on it vastly.
Do you guys have anything you would wish to plug before we close out here?
You can find me on YouTube if you like exploring the story and symbolism in video games, not just Silent Hill, but also Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Resident Evil, and various things like that. The Gaming Muse at YouTube.
I'm sorry, the symbolism of Resident Evil. Zombies are scary!
There's more going on there than you'd
is.
think.
There is.
But yeah,
I would.
I do get those comments.
William and I are both from RelyOnHorror.com. Come check us out. We got daily horror game news, previews, reviews, and more. Right now, we're going absolutely apeshit over Resident Evil Remake 3, which is, I'm going to use the word confirmed at this point. There's so much evidence, but it looks like that's going to be announced on Tuesday. So come back and when Resident Evil 2 Remake got announced, I wrote a 5,000 word piece examining the trailer frame by frame. So stop by if you want some of that.
Okay.
And also check out Rourke and I's fan art that we did for the new RE3 remake Nemesis. That's on the
your 2 Nemesis. Those were really cool.
Yeah, yours was fucking incredible, man.
Feedback on that. Thank you. And you can also go to my YouTube page. That's screamingraveproductions.com. And that has some Silent Hill goodies and some other stuff on its way.
My site is alchemillahospital.net, and I also have I've been working on a lot of fan arts and things on Etsy.com, and my shop is named Amy Balot, and I have Cynthia's butt tattoo, so I spent a whole bunch of money. I spent a whole bunch of money trying to have this professionally made, her butt tattoo.
Yeah, it's like a temporary
bringing
tattoo.
Silent Hill into real life. Yeah, but I had to recreate all the art and things.
Amy, you recently made a channeling stone as well, didn't you?
Oh yes, I made channeling stones and the Silent Hill 1 plates puzzle, like the Alice in Wonderland plates.
That's really good. Check them out.
I'll of course link it in the news post. And Whitney, I assume if you guys are here, you already know my Silent Hill site, SilentHillSorksite.com. I have a Let's Play channel now, Whitney Plays. I started a new Deadly Premonition themed YouTube channel with another superfan, and we're doing videos kind of exploring that now series because we got Deadly Premonition 2 coming out. Very exciting, and yeah. So you guys have a great. Next time we are going to talk about Origins, and that should be a lot of fun. I gotta replay it. I have not replayed it in a while. I hope you guys will replay it too.
I'll be playing it for the first time because I didn't own it until this year.
Yay! What'd you get it on? PSP or?
PS2.
Ah, that's the really dark version.
I hate the PS2 version. I don't like the way that it didn't adapt any of the controls for a PS2. It just left them as is.
I have it and have yet to play it. I got it when it came out, but I still have yet to play that version.
Same.
Yeah, well, we should talk more about Origins when we.
Yeah. So hopefully,
Or Origins.
Hopefully we'll do that one sometime in January. Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll speak to you all again real soon. Bye.
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 Voices and Static, the podcast of the Silent Hill fan site, SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com, was recorded and edited by me, Whitney Chavis. I wanted to give thanks once again to all my guests today, and also a big shout out to Fungo. His Silent Hill media site, containing video, voice, sounds, and music clips from all the Silent Hill games, has been such a godsend over the years. And most of the game clips you heard in today's podcast was downloaded from his site over at silenthillmedia.net.